Marshall Peak. Chapter 4426. He really came. As a shopkeeper of First Inn, the proprietress had a lot of connections, and she was adept at gathering information. Moreover, First Inn was the property of an elder from Xian Yuan Cave Heaven named Si-Tu Kong, so it was related to the aforementioned Cave Heaven. Therefore, she definitely knew better than most people about this kind of information. Since she had said it wasn't the case, it must be the truth. Although the rumors are false, the reason those Sixth-Order Open Heaven Realm Masters from the second-class Great Forces are not willing to ascend to the Seventh-Order Open Heaven Realm does have something to do with the Cave Heavens and Paradises. As for the exact reason, the proprietress shook her head and fell silent, apparently unwilling to disclose anything more. Mao Zhe and the others exchanged glances, as they felt like they were on tenterhooks. However, since the proprietress wasn't willing to explain anything, they were not in any place to force her. In any case, the Sixth-Order Open Heaven Realm Masters at the scene were worried about ascending to the Seventh-Order Open Heaven Realm in the future. The proprietress' words suggested that it might not be a good thing to reach the Seventh-Order Open Heaven Realm. The heritages of those second-class Great Forces are not as simple as they seem either, as their inheritances stretch back for many millennia. If they're faced with a crisis that would destroy their sex, they might just display a power that is unimaginable under normal circumstances. The proprietress turned to look at Yang Kai. Although Golden Rainbow Province isn't famous now, they have existed for far longer than Boundless Altar. Several tens of thousands of years ago, Golden Rainbow Province had a heritage that was approaching that of the 72 Paradises. However, they slowly declined for some reason. Yang Kai was astounded. I can't believe Golden Rainbow Province was so powerful in the past. If they were approaching the level of the 72 Paradises in the past, they should have been able to raise multiple high-rank Open Heaven Realm Masters. When a person reached the high-rank Open Heaven Realm, they could easily live for several tens of thousands of years. It wasn't certain what happened to Golden Rainbow Province that led to their downfall, but now, even the former lord of Golden Rainbow Province, Qi Jin, was only in the Fifth-Order Open Heaven Realm. With that said, what happened in Boundless Altar should serve as a warning to Yang Kai. His encounter in Boundless Altar made him realize that these long-time Great Forces might have some hidden powers, so he should never let his guard down. Otherwise, he was bound to suffer a setback. The proprietress said with a smile, "These Great Forces must have some capital in order to gain a footing in the 3,000 worlds. Golden Rainbow Province and Boundless Altar are the epitomes of such great forces. You must not be so reckless when you go about your business in the outside world. Don't oppress any second-class Great Force as you please, for some of them might be concealing high-rank Open Heaven Realm Masters." A shocked Yang Kai asked, "If a second-class Great Force has a high-rank Open Heaven Realm Master, wouldn't that make it first class?" The proprietress shook her head. "It doesn't work that way. When people mention first-class Great Forces, they're talking about the Cave Heavens and Paradises. Those that are under Cave Heavens and Paradises cannot be considered first class." A solemn Yang Kai said, "Got it." He looked in Golden Rainbow Province's direction and wondered how much heritage they had. The ship continued moving forward. Yang Kai had been to Golden Rainbow territory once before, when Bai Qi was about to ascend to the Fifth-Order Open Heaven Realm. The proprietress brought him and Bai Qi to this great territory, and it was in this place that they were besieged by Qi Jin, Ling Chunqiu, and the others. Bai Qi was disturbed during his breakthrough and almost lost his life as a result. The reason the proprietress brought Yang Kai to that place was to let him observe the process of ascending to the Open Heaven Realm, so that he could gain some experience from it. At that time, he had only condensed his wood and fire element powers, but now he was a Sixth-Order Open Heaven Master. Things had changed greatly even though not long had passed. Faced with the siege of those Open Heaven Realm Masters, Yang Kai, an Emperor Realm cultivator back then, was unable to do anything. In the end, he had to use one of Mie Meng's golden feathers to kill a Fourth-Order Open Heaven Realm Master, thus alleviating some of the proprietress' burden. Now that he was a Sixth-Order Open Heaven Realm Master though, A fourth-order open heaven realm master was no different from an ant in his eyes. Although Golden Rainbow Province sounded like a third-class great force, it was second-class in reality. It was just that they had been in existence for a long time, so they didn't want to bother changing their name. Golden Rainbow Province was undoubtedly the ruler of Golden Rainbow Territory. Just like the status of Void Land and Void Territory, Golden Rainbow Province was in charge of more than 10 third-class great forces and dozens of universe worlds of different sizes in this great territory. An expansive spirit province was hovering in the void, and its natural landscape was as beautiful as a painting. There were some light barriers around the spirit province that reflected the view around the void, and in front of every light barrier stood a Golden Rainbow Province disciple that was staring out intently, as though they were waiting for something. All of a sudden, a ship appeared right in front of a certain light barrier as the vessel charged towards Golden Rainbow Province. The disciple responsible for guarding the light barrier straightened up and performed different hand seals as the reflection of the light barrier magnified before his eyes. Soon, the figures on the deck clearly came into his sight. After making out the appearance of a particular man, the disciple yelled, "He really came!" Just then Yang Kai, who was standing on the deck, turned to look in a direction and snorted before pushing out his palm. The power of the palm seemed able to move both time and space in silence. The light barrier in front of Golden Rainbow Province that reflected the ship broke apart in an instant. The Open Heaven Realm Master, who was guarding the light barrier, was sent flying away as though he had been struck by lightning. He sprayed out a mouthful of blood, then got to his feet with difficulty. His expression had been transformed by horror. Void spying secret technique was a method used by those from Golden Rainbow Province to monitor their surroundings. It was supposed to be silent and impossible to detect. However, the other party had noticed his observation and even harmed him by pushing out his palm from afar. It had to be noted that it would still take the ship 2 or more hours before it reached Golden Rainbow Province. The person on the ship was clearly extraordinarily powerful, since he was able to send the force of his palm across such a vast distance. Given the disciple's cultivation, he was probably as fragile as an ant in front of that person. Not daring to be negligent, he immediately sent a message to the higher-ups. On the deck, Yang Kai lowered his gaze and fell into his thoughts. They seemed to be monitoring the surroundings from every angle in Golden Rainbow Province. Are they guarding against someone? He had a feeling that something was off, but he wasn't able to put his finger on it. On a certain spirit peak in Golden Rainbow Province, the new leader Chang Chi Shui abruptly opened his eyes as a glint flashed through his gaze. Then he said, "That person is here. The very survival of Golden Rainbow Province hinges on all of us. Fellow brothers, I hope you'll be united with me to fend off our enemies." The previous leader of Golden Rainbow Province was Qi Jin. However, just like Ling Chunxiu, he was killed in Void Land. Since he was dead, those from Golden Rainbow Province had to elect a new leader. Just like Qi Jin, Chang Chi Shui was also a fifth-order Open Heaven Realm Master, one of the remaining 3 in Golden Rainbow Province. As Chang Chi Shui spoke, 2 grunts of agreement came from the void. "Left and right protectors, come with me to greet our guests." Chang Chi Shui rose from where he was sitting, and then 2 rays of light shot from 2 different peaks and stood behind him. They were the 2 protectors of Golden Rainbow Province, who were both 5th-order Open Heaven Realm Masters. All 3 5th-order Masters of Golden Rainbow Province were present, which went to show how highly they regarded these visitors. With that said, it wasn't like they could take the visitors lightly. About 1 month ago, Boundless Altar's second elder unexpectedly came to visit them. Thinking that the other party might have some serious matters to discuss, Chang Chi Shui personally greeted him. Then he heard a piece of terrible news from the second elder. Boundless Altar was destroyed, and its thousands of disciples were now homeless. What was worse, Golden Rainbow Province was probably next. Chang Chi Shui was flabbergasted, but upon some probing, he learned that it was the doing of Void Land's Yang Kai. The previous leader Qi Jin had followed the Union Master of Heavenly Sword Union, Kong Feng, to invade Void Land. Everyone in Golden Rainbow Province was aware of that
Martial
fact.
Peak.
Chapter 4427 was killed in battle, justice, along with all the disciples and elders who went with him. There were not a lot of the Fifth Order Open Heaven Realm Masters. A ship from the Void came into his sight as the vessel charged towards him. Was the strongest among them. He bellowed and raised his hand. Start the array. It could be said that the battle had caused immense losses to Golden Rainbow cultivators of Golden Rainbow Province. They had been staying in Golden Rainbow territory. The Grand Array. In fact, layers of they had thought about avenging around the former leader's deaths. Regardless of what the grudges were between barriers had been formed. Golden Rainbow Province had been in existence from Golden Rainbow Province couldn't pretend, and at the peak of their power, happened since they were approaching the strength of the 72 paradises. They could only remain silent, many of the top cultivators were gone since their downfall. It never crossed their minds that those from Void Land would be so relentless. Their strength was manifested in the Grand Array, and forced all of its members to flee. The layers of light barriers appeared extremely sturdy as they surrounded Golden Rainbow Province. It was as though they were able to withstand the most violent storms in the world. The strength of a great force's heritage was evident in two aspects. One of them was the power of their Grand Array. The more ample their heritage was, the more powerful the Grand Array would be. Secondly, it was the support their disciples would get when ascending to the Open Heaven Realm. The Open Heaven Realm masters of every great force, if possible, would return to their sect before their predestined time of death. After they died, their small universes would collapse, and their world force would partially assimilate into the sect, which was how their heritage was strengthened. The small universe of a cultivator was full of the traces of their grand Tao, the essence of their entire martial Tao. This kind of Tao essence would also permeate the place alongside their world force, and remain in the sect. If any disciples in the future comprehended the same kind of grand Tao as their ancestors, they would be able to obtain part of this inheritance and enhance their chances of ascending to the Open Heaven Realm. For these two reasons, any great force in the world was extremely concerned about the accumulation of heritage in their own headquarters. The heritage of Golden Rainbow Province was truly extraordinary, as it had been gathered and built up over tens of thousands of years. Although the Grand Array wasn't as abstruse as Void Land's 9 heavenly layers, in terms of pure defensive strength, it was equal to, if not better than, the latter. After all, it had only been a short time since Void Land was founded. The predecessor, Seven Wonders Land, was also a second-class great force, but it was at best average among second-class forces. Even though its heritage had been accumulated over many years, it wasn't comparable to that of Golden Rainbow Province. When the heritage of Void Land became ampler after thousands to tens of thousands of years, the power of 9 heavenly layers would be significantly strengthened. Therefore, despite knowing that about 7 Sixth Order Open Heaven Realm Masters, and dozens of masters below the Sixth Order from Void Land had arrived, Changqi Shui still had the confidence to fend them off. Besides the promise from the old ancestor, he still had the Grand Array of Golden Rainbow Province. They might not have as many Open Heaven Realm Masters as those from Void Land, but they had the power to fight since the Grand Array was in place. On the ship's deck, Yang Kai gazed silently at the Spirit Province, which was protected by a glistening Grand Array, and snorted, "So they've been waiting for us." Earlier, he felt that something was off when he noticed that those from Golden Rainbow Province were monitoring their surroundings, as he wondered who the people were that they were wary of. It wasn't until this moment that he found out those from Golden Rainbow Province were guarding against him and his companions. How did those from Golden Rainbow Province find out that Yang Kai was coming, thus allowing them to get prepared in advance? The only explanation was that someone from Boundless Altar had come over to warn them. Yang Kai snorted. Do they think they'll be safe by hiding behind their Grand Array? Naive. Void Land's 9 heavenly layers weren't able to persevere for long when they were besieged previously, let alone the Grand Array of Golden Rainbow Province. At that time, the 100 Sects Alliance seemed to have many people on their side, but there were only a small number of top masters among them. The Open Heaven Realm masters behind Yang Kai were much stronger on average than those from the Alliance. In just a moment, the ship reached a spot that wasn't far away from the Grand Array of Golden Rainbow Province. Atop the deck, Yang Kai looked through the Grand Array, and saw that the natural landscape in the spirit province was as beautiful as a painting. They did have an extraordinary heritage. On the highest spirit peak stood 3 figures as they looked silently in Yang Kai's direction. The person at the front was a muscular and decent-looking man. As their eyes met, this man yelled, "Who are you?" "Voidland's Yang Kai." Yang Kai replied and shot him a glance. "Who are you?" "Golden Rainbow Province's Chang Chi Shui." The man at the front replied before asking, "Why have you come all the way here to Golden Rainbow Province, Brother Yang?" Yang Kai looked down at him and said, "The previous leader of Golden Rainbow Province, Qi Jin, invaded Void Land for no reason. This king is here to seek justice from your noble sect." Chang Chi Shui frowned. "What kind of justice are you seeking, Brother Yang?" Yang Kai grinned at him. "An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Since you all tried to exterminate my sect before, I am here to return the favor in kind." Chang Chi Shui's face fell as he bellowed, "Stop boasting shamelessly, Brother Yang. Do you think we are pushovers? Although we may be weak now, it doesn't mean you can oppress us as you please. Qi Jin offended you, and he only has himself to blame that he was killed in Void Land. When we learned of this matter, we allowed the matter to drop and have no intention of avenging him. However, if anyone dares to invade our sect, all of us from Golden Rainbow Province will fight with you until our death." Yang Kai gazed dispassionately at him and said, "The reason this king has come all the way here is to destroy your sect, but I'm not interested in unnecessary killing. However, if you dare to resist, many innocents won't be able to see the sunrise tomorrow, so please think twice." Chang Chi Shui roared, "None of the disciples from Golden Rainbow Province is a coward." If you're really concerned about the potential loss of innocent lives, leave now, and the grudges between us will be considered settled. However, if you remain obstinate, you are the ones who will end up in a horrible state." Yang Kai bared his fangs. "It seems that you're determined to struggle until death. Do you really think your grand array can stop this king?" "Well, you'll have to try to find out." Yang Kai nodded. "I'll grant your wish then. I hope you'll remain obstinate until the very end. Don't wail in pain while you die later." Then, Yang Kai raised his hand and swung it down as he coldly ordered, "Kill." The cultivators on the deck had been waiting for this moment. Previously, they were prepared to prove their worth in Boundless Altar. Since they had decided to join Void Land, they had to prove to Yang Kai that they were valuable to the sect. Unfortunately, there wasn't any conflict in Boundless Altar, as Yang Kai managed to settle the issue without taking any lives. As a result, none of them had a chance to showcase their capabilities. Certainly, they hoped to see those from Golden Rainbow Province remain stubborn. Following Yang Kai's order, the dozens of Open Heaven Realm Masters on the ship turned into rays of light and took a plunge. The next moment, countless divine abilities struck the grand array of Golden Rainbow Province, causing the light barriers to flicker as ripples spread across its surface. The sight was truly horrifying. On the spirit peak, Chang Chi Shui turned pale, as he could feel the energy fluctuations coming from his enemies. The second elder from Boundless Altar was right to say that there were 7 sixth-order Open Heaven Realm Masters in Void Land, which made Chang Chi Shui feel jealous. Golden Rainbow Province only had 1 sixth-order Open Heaven Realm Master, the old ancestor who had been cultivating in seclusion for 3,000 years. On the other hand, Those from Void Land could easily deploy 7 Sixth-Order Open Heaven Realm Masters. Both parties were not equally matched at all. Fortunately, they had the Grand Array in place. If these attacks actually struck the Spirit Province, none of them could have warded off their enemies. Many of them would have been injured or killed for even trying to resist. Loud booms were continuously heard as the violent attacks landed on the Grand Array, which caused the entire Golden Rainbow Province to tremble. The disciples turned ashen as they looked up at the sky in horror. The disciples who were in charge of the Grand Array were madly pouring their strength into it to keep it operating. All of them knew that once the Grand Array was broken through, they would be killed ruthlessly. Only by keeping the Grand Array running could they hope to fend off the enemies. However, regardless of how sturdy the defense was, it couldn't possibly endure a constant bombardment of attacks. Back then, after Grandmaster Wu Liang was done arranging the 9 heavenly layers, he passed the array jade to Yang Kai and told him that the array was solid enough to endure the attacks of 10 mid-rank Open Heaven Realm Masters for several days. The mid-rank Open Heaven Realm Masters he was talking about should be in the 6th Order, just below the 7th Order. In fact, when the 100 Sects Alliance invaded Void Land, the 9 heavenly layers actually didn't last for long. It wasn't that Grandmaster Wu Liang's calculations were wrong. Instead, it was because they didn't have enough energy supply. On another note, Yang Kai had the intention of luring the enemies into the sect, so he intentionally opened up the Grand Array. If even the 9 heavenly layers wasn't invincible, there was no way the Grand Array of Golden Rainbow Province could last for a long time either. Martial Peak, Chapter 4428 Li Luo Shui. They were unable to see clearly in the mist, and even their divine senses were greatly restricted. Also, there seemed to be a great danger lurking in the mist, waiting to burst out. Rumbling sounds were suddenly heard as a world-shaking force undulated. The force far surpassed the 5th Order Open Heaven realm and reached the 6th Order in scale. Other than the old ancestor who had been in seclusion for a long time, Golden Rainbow Province didn't have 6th Order Open Heaven Realm Masters. The reason they were able to unleash such an attack was that they had made use of the Grand Array. Exclamations were heard as some of the cultivators from Void Land, who were inside the mist, were struck. Some of the low-rank Open Heaven Realm Masters were instantly killed due to negligence. As the Grand Array's power blossomed, Yang Kai sported a solemn expression and released his divine sense. The next instant, his expression changed drastically as he yelled, "There are some weird creatures in the mist. Be careful." He could detect that there were a lot of tiny insects hiding in the mist that were not visible to the eye. While they were unsuspecting, these insects snuck into their bodies through the pores and began draining their blood essence. As Yang Kai spoke, he surged his Golden Crow's true fire. In an instant, a layer of black flame started burning around his figure, as though he had turned into a fireball, illuminating a radius of 1,000 meters around himself. Crackling sounds were continuously heard as the Golden Crow's true fire burned the tiny insects in the mist. Yang Kai flew forward, and wherever he went, the insects were instantly killed. However, due to the fact that his divine sense had been restricted, he was unable to find out the enemy's whereabouts. At the same time, he had to be careful not to accidentally hurt his companions, so his movements were rather restricted. It wasn't until this moment that he had a taste of what the 100 Sects Alliance went through when they barged into the bewildering array of 9 heavenly layers. And it was certainly awful. Although the Grand Array of Golden Rainbow Province wasn't as abstruse as the 9 heavenly layers, there were indeed some similarities. A second-class great force like Golden Rainbow Province was able to ward off Yang Kai's powerful subordinates using their accumulated heritage. In the entire 3,000 worlds, basically every great force had their own Grand Array. Now Yang Kai realized if he rashly decided to invade a sect's headquarters, he might still suffer a setback, even though there was a huge gap in power between both parties. The reason he was able to easily take down Boundless Altar some time ago was that they were unprepared for what was about to befall them. Before they could even activate their Grand Array, Yang Kai had broken through it and barged into the sect. If Boundless Altar had prepared in advance and activated their Grand Array, there would have been an intense battle. Rumbling sounds were continuously heard as more people shrieked, and it wasn't certain whether it was the enemies or Yang Kai's subordinates who were screaming. Yang Kai was incensed as he had come with a large group of Open Heaven Realm masters in an imposing manner. If he wasn't even able to take down Golden Rainbow Province, he would become a laughingstock in the future. As he shook his figure, the golden crow was heard cawing. A great sun leapt into the sky from behind him, with a three-legged exotic bird seeming flying around within it. In an instant, a dazzling sun hung above the sky of Golden Rainbow Province. Regardless of how thick the mist was, it was unable to block out the sunlight. Under the scorching sunlight, the mist instantly evaporated, and the tiny insects hidden within were all killed. Golden Crow cast the sun was a divine manifestation that Yang Kai had comprehended that was extremely powerful. In order not to accidentally hurt his companions, he was unable to fully activate its power. Therefore, he had been careful when using it. Despite that, after the mist dissipated, many of his subordinates were seen with reddened faces, and their skin that was exposed to the air was covered in blisters. The weaker cultivators were more severely affected, while cultivators in the Fourth Order Open Heaven realm and above were less impacted. With the mist gone, they were able to see their enemies clearly. Certainly, Mao Zhou and the others, who were quite frustrated already, wouldn't miss this opportunity and instantly charged towards the exposed array nodes. Soon, people were heard shrieking as the disciples of Golden Rainbow Province, who were in charge of the array nodes, were completely powerless to stop Mao Zhou and the others, and were directly killed. In just over 10 breaths of time, the grand array of Golden Rainbow Province was completely destroyed. On the main spirit peak, Chang Qishui shuddered in fear, as though he had been struck by lightning. He watched as the disciples were slaughtered, but there was nothing he could do to help them. He let out a sigh, thinking that Golden Rainbow Province would be destroyed on this day, if the old ancestor still didn't appear. Meanwhile, Yang Kai had retracted. Golden Crow cast the sun as he stared coldly at Chang Qishui, his eyes filled with murderous intent. Without moving his figure, he raised his hand and pushed out his palm towards Chang Qishui. He had given the other party a chance. If those from Golden Rainbow Province gave up on resisting like those from Boundless Altar had done, he wouldn't have decided to kill them ruthlessly. Since they were still so obstinate though, they only had themselves to blame. Faced with the pressure from a Sixth Order's Open Heaven Realm Master, Chang Qishui was forced to lower his figure, as he felt the aura of death engulfing him. Just then, Yang Kai suddenly narrowed his eyes and balled up his fist instead as he summoned his Azure Dragon Spear, and then thrust it out. Before the spear even reached Chang Qishui, a slender hand abruptly appeared in front of him like a phantom. The fingers curled up, then nonchalantly flicked at the spear 3 times. An immense force burst forth and Yang Kai felt as though a mountain had crashed into his spear. He almost lost grip of his weapon, as his figure shook and moved backwards. His face had also turned pale. At the same time, Mao Zhou and the others noticed this, and looked over in the direction where the slender hand appeared. There a woman with a delicate brow and long hair that hung over her shoulders appeared. Her purple dress with a belt around the waist fluttered in the wind. She looked like she was about 28 years old, which was the prime age for a woman. Her peaks were tall and her waist was slender. If they came across such a woman somewhere else, they would have thought that she was a young woman who had just come of age. However, presently, this woman was exuding an aura that no one could ignore. That was the aura of a high-rank Open Heaven Realm Master. Yang Kai narrowed his eyes. A 7th Order Open Heaven Realm Master? Other than a 7th Order Open Heaven Realm Master, no one else could so easily ward off his attack, and the woman's aura proved his point. There was no doubt that she was a newly advanced 7th Order Open Heaven Realm Master. Yang Kai had previously gone through such a stage. After he ascended to the 5th Order Open Heaven Realm, he was unable to curb his aura since his cultivation hadn't stabilized yet. This young woman was in exactly the same situation. Mao Zhou and the others sported solemn expressions as they exchanged glances in disbelief. It was inconceivable that Golden Rainbow Province had a 7th Order Open Heaven Realm Master with them. They wouldn't have believed it if they hadn't seen it with their own eyes. At that instant, they felt their hearts sinking. Although she was clearly a newly promoted 7th Order Master, she was still a high-rank Open Heaven Realm Master. High rank and mid-rank were two completely different realms. It could be said that the gap between them was like the difference between the heavens and earth. On the other hand, Chang Chi-shui had just escaped from death's door, as he fell into a dazed state for a moment. Then, he snapped out of his trance, and widened his eyes before falling on one knee. With an excited expression he said, 37th Sect Master of Golden Rainbow Province, Chang Chi-shui, greets martial ancestor Li. The person before his eyes was old ancestor Li Luo Shui, who started cultivating in seclusion 3,000 years ago. The disciples of Golden Rainbow Province were dumbfounded. They initially had no idea who this young woman was, but upon hearing the sect master's words, they were shocked to learn that she was their old ancestor. It never crossed their mind that Golden Rainbow Province had such a powerful master. At that instant, they were all energized as they fell on their knees and shouted, "Greetings, martial ancestor." Many men secretly examined the woman and thought that not only was the old ancestor alluring, but she also had an intoxicating figure. They couldn't help but admire her, thinking that they could die with no regrets should such a woman actually become interested in them. Without even turning her head, Li Luo Shui darted her gaze around and scanned the surroundings, then sighed, "I can't believe Golden Rainbow Province has declined so much." An embarrassed Chang Chi-shui apologized. "I'm sorry for disappointing you, martial ancestor. I'm truly useless." Li Luo Shui scoffed. "All of you are indeed useless. Not only have you squandered away the heritage of our ancestors, Chapter 4429, but you also can't even repel the enemies at our gates. Augmentation disgraceful." The light of Chang Chi-shui was covered in cold sweat with the attack, as he almost fell on all fours. Although the old ancestor looked like a sweet young girl and pushed out her palm at Young Kai, had no qualms about a 7th Order Open Heaven force fluctuated around her slender hand as it filled Young Kai's vision. Li Luo Shui replied, "The world seemed to have disappeared as all he could see was her palm." Answered before slowly getting to his feet. He stiffened and squirmed as he instinctively felt a great sense of danger. He looked in Young Kai's direction. It was the first time he directly battled against the high-rank Open Heaven Realm Master. Then he reported, "Although he had witnessed battles between high-rank Open Heaven Realm Masters several times before, Li Luo Shui shot a dispassionate glance at Young Kai. Then said, the war when the 106th Order Open Heaven Realm Masters and 15th Order Open Heaven Realm Masters, 4 high-rank Open Heaven Realm Masters outside the shadowless cave heaven." Young Kai stared at the young woman and asked, although Young Kai was able to feel the formidableness of high-rank Open Heaven Realm Masters at those times, it was too far beyond him to truly understand. It wasn't until this moment that he realized the huge gap between the mid-rank and high-rank Open Heaven realms. Faced with this palm, Yang Kai felt as though he had turned into an ant, and that there was no way he could dodge. With a great roar, he thrust out his spear even harder, causing it to give off a terrifying radiance. Violent explosions were heard as a horrifying force spread out. A pale Yang Kai was sent flying away while Li Luo Shui remained on the spot, her figure only shaking slightly. When she looked down at her hand, she saw a tinge of redness in the center of her palm. Although the wound soon healed, she couldn't believe that the other party was able to harm her during the exchange of moves just now. This was inconceivable to her. She had ascended to her current realm from the peak of the 6th Order Open Heaven realm, so she was fully aware of just how much strength the 6th Order Master should be able to exert. Initially, she thought that she could easily kill this arrogant boy, but the situation turned out far different from what she had imagined. Just like Yang Kai had said, she was a newly promoted 7th Order Open Heaven Realm Master, so the power she could use was limited. On the other hand, the enemy was quite intimidating, as they had 7 6th Order Open Heaven Realm Masters and 15 5th Order Open Heaven Realm Masters. Facing such a force, she might not be able to save Golden Rainbow Province. She initially intended to kill one of the enemy's 6th Order Masters first to deter and intimidate the others, but it turned out that not only could the other party escape from her strike, but he even had the power to counterattack. The young man's capabilities were beyond her wildest imagination, and at that moment, she sported a solemn expression. On the other hand, after Yang Kai was forced backwards for some distance, he managed to stabilize himself. He didn't even bother to wipe away the golden blood at the corner of his mouth, as he looked down condescendingly at Li Luo Shui and sneered. Is this all you, a seventh-order master, has to show? Back then, when the 100 Sects Alliance invaded Voidland, other than using the 9 heavenly layers to kill Kong Feng, Yang Kai could only stand back and watch. When Zhu Jiuyin battled against 4 masters outside of the shadowless cave heaven, he could only watch the intense battle from the sidelines. However, at this moment, he finally had the right to fight a high-rank open heaven realm master. This right meant a lot to him, as it signified a huge leap forward in his martial Dao. He no longer felt as powerless as he was in the past. At this moment, Yang Kai felt fortunate that he didn't insist on directly ascending to the high rank, which was practically impossible. Only the strength within one's own grasp could be considered real. Li Luo Shui was a new 7th-order open heaven realm master, whose realm was still not stable. But despite that, the 7 6th-order open heaven realm masters could only force a draw in the battle against her, while Yang Kai alone had to bear half of the pressure. Yang Kai couldn't help but think that the high-rank open heaven realm was indeed a completely different realm from the mid-rank. Li Luo Shui was already so powerful even though she had only just achieved an ascension. When she managed to stabilize her realm and accumulated some heritage, how much more power would she be able to exert? How formidable must Zhu Jiuyin be, since she was able to deal with 4 high-rank open heaven realm masters on her own outside of the shadowless cave heaven back then. It had to be noted that the 4 high-rank open heaven realm masters from that time were unlike Li Luo Shui. All of them ascended to the 7th order a long time ago, so they were certainly much stronger than Li Luo Shui currently was. Since a 7th order open heaven realm master was already so strong, what about the 8th order or a 9th order? When Li Luo Shui saw that many of the disciples from Golden Rainbow Province were either killed or critically injured, and that the sect had descended into chaos, her alluring face contorted into a hideous expression. Her moves became increasingly powerful, as though she was adapting to her current realm. However, even though she was a 7th order open heaven realm master, she found it extremely difficult to kill any of her opponents. The leading young man was a master of the Tao of space, and his strength far surpassed the other 6th order open heaven realm masters. He had practically borne half of her attacks. If it weren't for this young man, Li Luo Shui had the confidence to kill the rest in short order. After just half an hour of combat, Yang Kai and everyone on his side was injured, but Li Luo Shui wasn't in any better condition. She no longer looked like a sweet young woman as presently. Her hair was a mess, and she was covered in sweat. Just then someone was heard screaming. Chang Qi Shui and the others were pushed over the edge by chef, accountant, and Ma Tianyuan, and had no choice but to cry out, "Martial ancestor, save us!" Right after Chang Qi Shui shouted, Chef slashed across his neck with his knife and sent his head flying away. Blood started spurting out of his neck like a fountain. Realizing that they were unable to turn things around, the left and right protectors tried to flee, but they didn't have a chance to do so. Accountant shot the beads from his abacus at them from all directions and formed countless holes in their figures. Ma Tianyuan promptly made a move and beheaded the 2 of them. The 3 5th-order open heaven realm masters of Golden Rainbow Province were all killed, while the other open heaven realm masters had basically been wiped out beforehand. Countless others below the open heaven realm were either dead or dying. The entire Golden Rainbow Province was no different from a living hell, and the Spirit Province, where the sect was located, was beginning to crumble and crack. Li Luo Shui shouted through clenched teeth, "All of you must die today." All of a sudden, her curvy figure shook as an invisible force spread out with her as the center. Yang Kai and the others, who had surrounded her, were sent flying away as they were caught off guard. Yang Kai's pupils contracted when he saw what was happening, as he felt his chest tightening. That was because Li Luo Shui's black hair and clothes flapped in the air, even though there wasn't a trail of wind, as though an invisible force was infusing into her petite figure from all directions. At the same time, her aura seemed to be rising rapidly. Yang Kai was flabbergasted as he had no idea what was going on. He secretly cursed at the man before he too dashed forward alongside Geng Qing and Zhouya. They had left their names on the loyalty list, so Yang Kai had total control over their lives. Regardless of how reluctant they were, they had to fight alongside him. For if anything happened to Yang Kai, the three of them would suffer as well. On the other hand, Hua Yong and Xu Mudan were more reserved. Firstly, they were not restricted by the loyalty list. Secondly, Xu Mudan was pregnant, so she couldn't take part in an intense battle lest her child is affected. The couple only helped their companions out by casting their divine abilities at Li Luo Shui from afar. The proprietress was naturally giving it her best as she and Yang Kai wove back and forth to get closer to Li Luo Shui. The force around Li Luo Shui surged as she remained on the same spot. Faced with the bombardment of attacks, she could easily ward them off by simply raising her hands. She no longer looked as flustered as before. The Azure Void Universe Augmentation Grand Law had pushed her power to an unimaginable level in a short time, allowing her to not only fend off the incoming attacks, but also counterattack at the same time, drawing grunts of pain from Yang Kai and the others. As time passed, Yang Kai and the others became covered in blood, looking completely battered. Judging from the current situation, these 7 sixth-order Open Heaven Realm Masters were obviously no match for Li Luo Shui, and it was just a matter of time before they were defeated and killed by her. However, Li Luo Shui no longer appeared calm as her expression grew anxious. This couldn't be helped though, as she was running out of time. The Azure Void Universe Augmentation Grand Law had allowed her power to increase significantly in a short time, but she could not ignore the downsides of this technique. This infusion of power was no different from poison to any Open Heaven Realm Master. The longer this kind of state persisted, the more unstable her small universe would become, and the more difficult it would be to expel all the impurities in the future and stabilize her cultivation. Therefore, she had to kill all her enemies and end the battle in the shortest time possible. The longer this dragged on, the worse her situation would become. When her small universe became unstable, she would lose the power to fight completely and suddenly be at the mercy of Yang Kai and the others. She repeatedly attempted to kill one of them to achieve a breakthrough, but she was always stopped by Yang Kai. The young man was an expert in the Tao of space whose skills were also phenomenal. The way he flitted about like a fly annoyed her to no end. By now, she clearly realized that the young man was the strongest among these sixth-order Open Heaven Realm Masters, but he was also the most difficult to deal with. If it weren't for him, she would have killed everyone else a long time ago, without having to resort to such drastic measures. She felt resentful as she targeted most of her attacks at Yang Kai, who had no choice but to try his best to defend himself and dodge, causing deep wounds to appear on his figure. There was no such thing as impenetrable defense in the world though. There came a moment when Li Luo Shui's eyes lit up as she saw an opening Yang Kai exposed and pushed out her palm as she bellowed, "Die!" Yang Kai had just stabilized his figure when he was faced with this attack. It seemed that there was no way he could dodge, so he had to fight. Realizing this, Yang Kai's figure stood firm and raised his spear to intercept the palm. At the same time he roared, "Golden Crow cast the sun!" A great sun suddenly leaped into the sky from behind him. It was so dazzling that the entire Golden Rainbow province was painted gold. There seemed to be a 3-legged exotic bird playing around in the great sun, cawing loudly for all to hear. A black flame burned at the tip of Azure Dragon's spear, as though it was able to extinguish everything in the world. Upon sensing the great sun's power, Li Luo Shui narrowed her eyes and exclaimed, "A divine manifestation?" She felt her chest tightening. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, she wouldn't have believed that a 6th-order Open Heaven Realm Master was able to use a divine manifestation. Even though she was a 7th-order Master now, she was still far from comprehending her own divine manifestation. How was a 6th-order Open Heaven Realm Master able to use one then? Regardless, the sight before her eyes forced her to acknowledge reality. Faced with this spear, Li Luo Shui halted her movement for a moment before she channeled even more force into her strike. If she missed this chance, it would probably take a long time before Yang Kai made such a mistake again, and time was the one thing she didn't have. So she decided that even if she was injured in return, she had to kill this little bastard with this one strike. As long as she could kill him, the rest wouldn't be a threat to her. Following a loud boom, Li Luo Shui was sent flying away while Yang Kai was also forced backwards. Using his divine manifestation Golden Crow casts the sun, Yang Kai, a sixth-order open heaven realm master, traded moves with Li Luo Shui, who had used the Azure Void Universe Augmentation Grand Law, with difficulty. Before Li Luo Shui could stabilize herself, the proprietress and the others had already pounced on her. She hurriedly dodged their attacks as she looked in Yang Kai's direction with glee, thinking that the brat's corpse must have exploded into nothingness upon impact. The next moment, though, she widened her eyes in disbelief. That was because, unlike her imagination, the boy wasn't vaporized like she expected. Although he was covered in blood and shrouded in a layer of blood mist, he was still alive. What's more, the great sun hanging in the sky was as dazzling as ever. Why is this brat so resilient? Li Luo Shui's eyes shrank. Meanwhile, Yang Kai was still reeling from the shock. If it weren't for his half-dragon body, he would have been killed just now. The Azure Void Universe Augmentation Grand Law was truly horrifying, as it could allow a person's power to increase tremendously in such a short time. Presently, the small universe in his body was in turmoil, as he had apparently been impacted by Li Luo Shui's attack. He spat out a mouthful of blood and opened his bloodshot eyes before looking in Li Luo Shui's direction. The next instant he performed a hand seal and yelled with a hideous expression, "Water reflects the moon." A cold-looking full moon suddenly appeared alongside the great sun. The moon cast its glow on the ground and brought with it endless coldness. It was a miraculous sight to behold as the sun and the moon hung in the sky at the same time. The sensations of cold and hot mingled, which made it impossible for them to identify whether it was day or night. Maoja felt his chest tightening as his heart clenched in fear. He had previously seen the sight of the sun and the moon appearing together on Profound Yang Mountain the day his sect was destroyed. He couldn't believe that he was seeing the same sight again. Then, he quickly sent a message to Gung Qing and Zhouya before they leaped away at the speed of lightning. While his allies were hurriedly retreating, Yang Kai's voice reverberated across the world, "Sun and Moon Divine Wheel." The sun and the moon began to rotate in an endless cycle above his head, kicking up a storm that shook the world itself. Space and time principles blended into a single entity and formed into a mysterious space-time strength. While the sun and the moon spun about, time warped wildly, and it felt as though only a breath had passed. But at the same time it was like millions of years had gone by. Besides time, space had also become strange. Those who seemed close by suddenly appeared in the distance, though they still looked as though they were standing right in front of their eyes. Everyone's senses became incredibly distorted. The sun and moon divine will spiraled across the sky of Golden Rainbow Province, as it slammed towards Li Luo Shui. She sported a solemn expression and roared. Not daring to have any reservations, she gathered all her strength, while performing a set of profound hand seals with her slender hands. Countless powerful divine abilities were cast at Sun and Moon Divine Wheel, in an attempt to block its advance. Everyone seemed to be seeing hallucinations as the sight before their eyes shattered, while the rumbling sounds were so thunderous that it pained their eardrums. Martial Peak, Chapter 4431, Forcing Back a Seventh Order. The violent movements subsided as everyone's warped perception slowly returned to normal. All of them were horrified when they looked up as Golden Rainbow Province had literally exploded. The Spirit Province had shattered into countless pieces which now drifted about randomly in the void, together with broken corpses which were scattered about here and there. Golden Rainbow Province was thoroughly destroyed. Without the protection of the Grand Array, the Spirit Province, with several tens of thousands of years of inheritance, was unable to withstand the fierce battle. Innumerable disciples from Golden Rainbow Province were either killed or injured. Only a small number of people survived the brutality of the Sun and Moon Divine Wheel's impact, not because they were stronger than the rest, but simply because they were luckier. On one of the broken pieces stood Li Luo Shui, as she fell into a dazed state. At this moment, this seventh order open heaven realm master was battered, and her hair was a mess. Although she had successfully parried the sun and moon divine wheel, she wasn't unharmed. She found it extremely difficult to deal with the eerie space-time strength that was now corroding her physique and small universe. On the other hand, Yang Kai was panting heavily. He felt as though all his energy had been sucked out of him, and his small universe had never been emptier. Although the sun and moon divine wheel was powerful, he hadn't fully mastered this new space-time strength, which was why he wasn't able to control how much force he wanted to exert. The consumption of energy just to use the divine ability was terrifying. However, even though he had used his most powerful divine ability, he was still unable to kill Li Luo Shui, which went to show that the gap between the 6th order and 7th order open heaven realm was indeed too wide to close. Still, holding his spear in one hand, he pointed at Li Luo Shui and drew a deep breath. As his chest bulged, he bellowed, "Come!" Her hair flapped in the air as she looked in Yang Kai's direction with a gaze filled with murderous intent. Before she could even make a move, though, her expression changed. Following that, her aura became extremely unstable as her face alternated between pale and livid. Li Luo Shui sprayed out a mouthful of blood, and as if struck by lightning, she staggered backwards as a chaotic world force started exuding from her petite figure. With a vicious-looking gaze, she shot a glare at Yang Kai, as though she was trying to imprint the man's face in the deepest part of her mind before she snarled through blood-soaked clenched teeth. "This queen will never forget what you've done to her today, and swears she will seek revenge." Right after she finished speaking, more blood streamed out of her mouth. Then she moved and dashed into the distance. "Where do you think you're going?" Yang Kai bellowed and attempted to chase after her. He certainly knew that he had to kill this enemy to avoid future calamity. Li Luo Shui was a 7th order open heaven realm master, so if she wasn't killed today, she would become a huge threat in the future. However, after taking a few steps forward, he staggered and almost lost his balance. He felt a burning sensation in his chest which made it hard for him to breathe. His small universe was in turmoil, making it impossible for him to focus. Stabbing his spear into the ground, Yang Kai looked up, but quickly realized that Li Luo Shui was nowhere to be found. Unresigned, he pounded his fist on the ground. The proprietress dashed towards him and supported his weight before asking worriedly, "How are you?" Yang Kai's aura was extremely unstable. Unable to speak, he just shook his head to indicate that he was fine. "The three of us ask for nothing else other than to be treated fairly." "Good." Yang Kai put on a faint smile. Mao Zhe and the others were forced to submit to him, and it was apparent that they were unresigned. Certainly, Yang Kai was aware of that. Regardless, as long as the loyalty list was in his hands, Mao Zhe and the others wouldn't be able to cause any trouble. Therefore, he didn't have to be wary of them. They were 6th order open heaven realm masters after all, so they could play vital roles at critical moments. Moreover, Yang Kai had always been an easygoing and fair-minded man. Chen Tianfei was the first one to leave his name on the loyalty list, and he was never mistreated. On top of that, he was also given the important duty of taking care of the gourd vine. Yang Kai believed that Mao Zhe and the others would change their impression of him as time passed. This spirit province has an extraordinary heritage, and its scenery is splendid. Void Land is indeed amazing, Sect Master. Hua Yong was ecstatic. Before coming to this place, he was worried that the heritage of Void Land might be weak. However, now, he realized that this place was truly exceptional. He and his wife had made the right decision to join Void Land. This place was already wonderful to begin with, and with so many 6th order open heaven realm masters joining, its future would be bright. Shu Mudan said in a small voice, "This grand array seems to be a little special as well." Yang Kai replied with a smile, "This grand array is called the 9 heavenly layers. Not only is it powerful, but it also has many different and unpredictable functions. In the past, 100 sects alliance led by Heavenly Sword Union invaded us, but they were all trapped in this grand array, and most of them were either killed or critically wounded." 9 heavenly layers, Mao Zhe muttered under his breath. He wasn't an expert in the array Dao, but just like Shu Mu Dan, he could see that this grand array was extraordinary, though he couldn't figure out its true power just from observing it. Upon hearing Yang Kai's words, he couldn't help but start having some expectations towards the 9 heavenly layers. Since the grand array was able to fend off the 100 Sects Alliance, it was surely quite powerful. What is that? It seems so lively. Shu Mu Dao turned to look in a different direction with a curious gaze. Yang Kai replied with a smile. That is Void Star City. It's a star city? Everyone aboard the ship was shocked as they gazed at the star city. They could see that the place was crammed with people, and countless flight-type artifacts could be seen leaving and entering through the void dock. The sight before their eyes suggested that it was a flourishing star city. Furthermore, the place was much larger than an average star city, clearly marking it as first class. They found it inconceivable that there was a first-class star city belonging to Voidland. They exchanged glances in disbelief, as they couldn't figure out why the star city of Voidland was so attractive to foreign cultivators and merchants. It had to be noted that every first-class star city had their own unique characteristics and products that could attract merchants from all over the 3,000 worlds. Voidland must possess an incredible heritage to control such a grand star city. If they were not powerful enough, this kind of profit-making place would have been snatched from them long ago. With such a star city as their support, those from Voidland wouldn't ever have to worry about resources. A glint flashed through Maoji's eyes as he realized that he had always underestimated Voidland. He initially thought that Voidland was just an average second-class great force, but the sight before his eyes proved him wrong. Voidland was clearly a peak-level second-class great force. Martial Peak, Chapter 4433. Shocking. Good. It's good that you've achieved an ascension, so that others will stop bothering you. And enough chatting for now. Come visit me when you're free. The 2 little ones miss you too. Yang Kai replied respectfully. I'll pay you a visit when I'm done with everything. The head then retracted as the fog swelled up and covered up any traces of it. Mao Zhou and the others felt as though they had just escaped from death's door, and their backs were all drenched in cold sweat. Husband, what was that? Shu Mu Dan was pale as she leaned close to Hua Yong, as though she was trying to seek a sense of security. Hua Yong gulped and said hesitantly, perhaps it was a turtle's head. Shu Mu Dan was torn between laughter and tears. Is there such a huge turtle in the world? How gargantuan must his body be since his head was already so big? Baishi, Maoji said in a bitter voice as he looked at Yang Kai. The divine dragon has 9 sons, and Baishi bears a heavy load. I can't believe that Baishi belongs to Voidland. Upon hearing that, all of them were flabbergasted. Yang Kai said with a smile, You're indeed a knowledgeable man, Brother Mao. However, Senior Baishi doesn't belong to Voidland per se. Instead, he's carrying Voidland on his back. He had been asleep for countless years, and as time passed, a spirit province formed on his back, which was occupied by the predecessor of Voidland. Fortunately, Senior is a kind and benevolent man who doesn't have the heart to kill, so he has allowed us to remain. The corners of Maoji's brow twitched while Hua Yong gulped and asked in a raucous voice, Senior Baishi carries Voidland on his back. This piece of news was shocking to him. Divine spirits were famous and powerful creatures. Every mature divine spirit was as formidable as a high-rank open heaven realm master. For an ancient divine spirit like Baishi, he was probably stronger than the average 8-order open heaven realm master. Since Voidland rested on his back, there was no way Baishi would sit back and do nothing should an existential crisis come to the spirit province. In other words, the presence of such a divine spirit was the greatest protection Voidland could have. What puzzled Hua Yong was why Baishi was so cordial to Yang Kai. For such a formidable presence like him, he probably had no regard for anyone in the entire 3,000 worlds. On the other hand, a glint flashed through Maoji's eyes as he fell into his thoughts. Previously, Yang Kai had used his dragon transformation to destroy Profound Yang Mountain, which made Maoji believe that he was a member of the Dragon Clan. Now it was obvious to him that Baishi's attitude might have something to do with this. After all, She had a dragon clan bloodline. Void Land was a magnificent place with an extraordinary heritage, and it was close to a flourishing star city, which ensured that they would never run out of resources. It was also protected by Baishi. It was probably the only second-class great force in the entire 3,000 worlds to have all these advantages. Before coming to Void Land, all of them were wondering about what kind of place Void Land was, and whether it could accommodate powerful people like them. If the heritage of Void Land was too shallow, it would only hinder the development of their potential as Sixth-Order Open Heaven Realm Masters. However, upon their arrival, they realized that Void Land's heritage was truly spectacular. They no longer dared to underestimate this place, and instead felt honored, because they were now part of Void Land, at least in name. The next moment, a gap appeared in the fog as two figures shot out through it and landed on the deck. A pleasantly surprised Yuhi stared fixedly at Yang Kai as she tried her hardest to suppress her excitement and elegantly saluted the man. "Young master." "Enough of that." After adjusting his clothes, he sat down in a dignified manner. He swept a glance over the crowd, and soon his gaze fell upon Maoja and the others from the shadowless cave heaven. Smiling, he asked, "Have you all gotten used to living in Void Land?" Maoja replied, "Everything in Void Land is wonderful. Many thanks for your concern, sir." They had slowly learned about the various heritage of Void Land in the past months, so they thought that it wasn't a bad idea to have joined. The abundant resources here would be beneficial to their martial Dao. Furthermore, since two divine spirits lived in Void Land, this place certainly could accommodate Sixth-Order Open Heaven Realm Masters like them. A grateful Hua Yong continued, "We had stayed in the shadowless cave heaven for thousands of years, and were extremely lucky to finally leave that place. Second manager also takes good care of us. We feel fortunate that we were able to join Void Land." Compared to the shadowless cave heaven, the environment in Void Land was essentially paradise. Yang Kai nodded gently. "I'm glad that you've gotten used to living here." Then, he gazed at Bian Yuqing. "Second manager, can you tell me everything that has happened in the sect while I wasn't around?" "Everything has been proceeding smoothly, sir." Bian Yuqing was fully prepared. Upon hearing Yang Kai's question, she immediately reported to him about the important issues that had occurred over the past 2 years in detail. During that period of time, Void Land didn't go through any drastic changes. The only thing that was different was that there were more Open Heaven Realm Masters now. Many of those from Abundant City were already on the brink of achieving an ascension to begin with. However, due to the various restrictions in the Blood Monster Cave Heaven, they were unable to do so. Upon leaving the Blood Monster Cave Heaven, Mo Mei and the others were the first batch of people who made it to the Open Heaven Realm. Nevertheless, more cultivators from Abundant City awaited an ascension. Over the past 2 years, about 300 people had attempted to break through. Most of them had succeeded, but a small number of people lost their lives due to their failure to make it to the Open Heaven Realm. Martial Peak, Chapter 4435, Fulfilling Their Roles. A cultivator had to refine yin, yang, and the 5 elements, then split heaven and earth apart within their body to form a small universe in order to break through to the Open Heaven Realm. The process could be said to be extremely dangerous, and regardless of how well prepared one was, one might still lose their life in the attempt. That was what happened to some of the cultivators from Abundant City. The people from Abundant City had been stuck in the Emperor Realm for centuries, if not millennia, giving them a long time to solidify their foundations and accumulate strength. The orders of the materials they had refined were definitely within their limits, as they wouldn't refine materials that they wouldn't be able to bear. However, some of them still lost their lives while attempting to achieve ascension. The first batch of people from Abundant City, about 300 of them, all successfully broke through because they each had the assistance of a Heavenly Yuan Seal stabilizing pill. However, over the past 2 years since Yang Kai left, more and more people from Abundant City had attempted to reach the Open Heaven Realm. Although Yang Kai had left behind some heavenly yuan seal stabilizing pills before heading to the shadowless cave heaven, the supply wasn't sufficient to satisfy the demand. That was the reason some of them ended up falling. With that said, the percentage of those from Abundance City who lost their lives due to their attempts to achieve an ascension was comparatively lower than average. After all, due to the limitations of the environment they used to live in, they had more time for accumulation and preparation. Now, excluding the people brought back by Yang Kai this time, there were about 500 Open Heaven Realm Masters in Voidland. If Mao Zhe and the others were included, the number would be about 600. That was a terrifying figure. In terms of the quantity and quality of the Open Heaven Realm Masters, Voidland had surpassed 99% of all second-class great forces, though it still wasn't comparable to the cave heavens and paradises. After all, it had only been a short time since Voidland was founded. More time was needed for its heritage to be accumulated. After Bian Yuqing was done with her report, she took her seat. Then Mo Mei rose from the chair and briefly talked about the current situation in the Star City. It could be said that the Star City was thriving. That was because they would put one heavenly yuan seal stabilizing pill up for auction every 3 months, so the city could attract more and more cultivators from the 3,000 worlds. Even the Open Heaven Realm Masters from the cave heavens and paradises would appear in the auction house when the time was right. With more traffic came more commerce, causing many resources to flow into the Star City each day, allowing it to grow and develop further. It was a virtuous cycle. The shops in the Star City were all rented out by now, and their businesses were booming. Even the private cave mansions had all been snatched up by the cultivators who now lived or worked in the Star City. Voidland now earned about 100 million Open Heaven pills every month from the Star City, and the amount was still increasing even now. Mao Zhe and the other newcomers were dumbfounded upon hearing that. There was no doubt that the Star City could be considered first class, since it could help Voidland earn 100 million Open Heaven pills per month. The Star City alone could provide all the resources that those from Voidland would need. It had to be noted that one could buy a lot of things with 100 million Open Heaven pills. Although it wasn't enough to buy a 7th-order material, they could get their hands on several 6th-order materials if they were lucky. As time passed, Voidland's wealth would continue to increase. The Star City could be said to be Voidland's cornucopia. With the rise in fame, more cultivators could be seen entering and leaving the Star City. This didn't pose a problem initially, as those from the governor's mansion were still able to keep on top of everything. The merchants who did business in the Star City had to pay rent and taxes. Voidland, as the overseer of the Star City, was responsible for making sure that the city and the people were safe. They had to ensure that no fights would take place, and when they did, they had to immediately settle the problems. Only by doing so could they give the cultivators a sense of security and showcase the heritage and competency of Voidland. However, following 2 years of rapid development, the governor's mansion was finding it increasingly hard to manage the city. This couldn't be helped, as the rise in popularity and development of the Star City meant that more and more powerful cultivators would come to visit. The person who could directly sense the changes was Jin Yuan Lang, who was responsible for guarding the Void Dock. Since the reopening of the Voidland Star City, Jin Yuan Lang had been appointed by Yang Kai to guard the Void Dock and inspect the people who entered and left the city. Since he was a 5th-order Open Heaven Realm Master, he could usually handle most situations that arose. However, 6th-order Open Heaven Realm Masters were now more commonly seen in the city. As a 5th-order Open Heaven Realm Master, it was difficult for him to deter 6th-order Masters if they chose to be unruly. If 2 6th-order Open Heaven Realm Masters got into a scuffle in the Star City, Mo Mei, who was responsible for managing the city, wouldn't be able to handle it alone. Once such a scenario happened, not only would the city suffer losses, but it would also have a huge impact on Voidland's reputation. This was the issue that had to be settled immediately. Fortunately, Yang Kai had brought back some powerful Open Heaven Realm Masters, including several in the 6th Order. Hua Yong and Shu Mudan, had already requested to join Voidland back on Twin Spirit Island, and Yang Kai had appointed them to be the elders right away. Mao Zhe, Geng Qing, and Zhouya were Sixth-Order Open Heaven Realm Masters as well, so they couldn't be undervalued. Following Yang Kai's order, the three of them also joined the Elder Hall. Mao Zhe and the others gladly accepted the appointment. They were restricted by the loyalty list, so their lives were under Yang Kai's control. Strictly speaking, they were just Yang Kai's servants. However, during the time they were together, he had never mistreated them, nor had he exposed the nature of their relationship to anyone, which saved them from any embarrassment. Although they had never said it out loud, they were grateful towards Yang Kai for his discretion. The business of the Azura Arena was booming because many young cultivators liked to engage in all-out fights to both train and make a name for themselves. In fact, the Azura Arena was established following a discussion between Yang Kai and a representative from Azura Heaven. Voidland held a large stake in the Azura Arena, which generated an equivalent revenue share from this profitable business. Meanwhile, a Dao temple belonging to Yin Cave Heaven was also established. Chu Huashang used to be stationed there in the past as its supervisor. Yang Kai met that seductress in the Grand Ancient Ruins boundary. Then, they went through many life and death moments there, and in the Blood Monster Cave Heaven, eventually growing quite close. After that, she tagged along when Yang Kai headed to the Shattered Heaven. Although she didn't manage to help much, Yang Kai was still grateful for the solidarity she had shown. This was no small matter. After all, Chu Huashang's identity was a little special, as she was a core disciple from one of the 36 cave heavens. So everything she did represented Yin Yang Cave Heaven. As such, she wasn't able to do whatever she pleased most of the time. However, she still steadfastly followed Yang Kai to oppose Tizheng and the others who had laid a trap for Yang Kai. There were two reasons why Azura Heaven had set up an Azura Arena in every major star city. First of all, it was to train the disciples of their own sect. And secondly, it was to amass wealth. The disciples of Azura Heaven had to go through life and death battles in order to grow rapidly. Nevertheless, in the 3,000 worlds, there were rarely any places that would allow them to engage in such fierce battles. Therefore, the Azura Arenas were their best option. Moreover, these Azura Arenas were like a treasure trove for them. The Azura Arenas from different star cities each generated massive amounts of revenue for Azura Heaven every year. Yin Yang Cave Heaven had also set up a Dao temple in every major star city. However, they didn't intend to amass wealth or train their disciples in these places. Instead, the existence of these Dao temples was to attract more talented people. The disciples of Yin Yang Cave Heaven were all beautiful women or handsome men, and their core secret arts revolved around forming intimate relationships with the opposite sex. In those Dao temples, their disciples could engage in discourse with talented young people from different parts of the 3,000 worlds, and even find suitable life partners, which would then strengthen the sect's power. Yang Kai frowned. I thought core disciples of Yin Yang Cave Heaven would never marry outsiders. It was difficult to raise a disciple like Chu Huashang. If she was married to an outsider, another sect would reap all the benefits. Hence, For a core disciple like Chu Huashang, the man had to get married into her sect, not the other way round. Suing Shui replied, "She's not going to leave the sect. The man will have to get married into our great force." Upon hearing her clarification, Yang Kai said, "I see." Suing Shui stared at him and said, "If you didn't pass my test, I wouldn't have informed you about it. Since you're a righteous man, however, I suppose Chuer's eyes haven't failed her, so you have the right to know about it." Yang Kai rose from the chair and cupped his fist with a solemn expression. "Many thanks for informing me about this matter, senior sister." After staring fixedly at him for a moment, Suing Shui also got up. "That's all I have to say. Farewell." "I'll see you off." Yang Kai hurriedly followed her. Suing Shui didn't turn him down as she continued moving forward. It wasn't until Yang Kai left Void Land with her and saw her heading towards the Star City that he returned. It surprised him that those from Yinyang Cave Heaven were going to hold a Dao Theory Assembly to look for a husband for Chu Huashang. However, Suing Shui had said that the assembly was being held to make it up to the other cave heavens and paradises. After all, Chu Huashang had violated their rules, so her confinement was probably not enough to appease the various cave heavens and paradises. It wouldn't have mattered if Yang Kai wasn't aware of it, but now that he had found out about it, he naturally couldn't turn a blind eye. Nevertheless, he was in a dilemma, as he wasn't sure what to do. If he took part in the Dao Theory Assembly, he definitely had to become the winner, which would then mean that he would have to marry Chu Huashang. Chu Huashang's appearance and aptitude undoubtedly stood at the apex of the 3,000 worlds, and hardly any women could surpass her. Certainly, no man could resist such a talented beauty. If Yang Kai had still been single, he would have leapt at the opportunity to marry her. However, he already had several wives, so he wasn't willing to become emotionally entangled with Chu Huashang. Moreover, she was a core disciple of her great force, so those from Yinyang Cave Heaven wouldn't allow her to live with Yang Kai without him joining their force. With that said, he wouldn't be able to set his mind at ease if he didn't at least see her. At that moment, he was unable to make a decision. A moment later, he sent a message to Mo to tell her to ask around in the Star City, in order to find out whether things were just like what Suing Shui had said. Martial Peak, Chapter 4439, A Pleasant Surprise. A figure could faintly be seen in the ray of light. Yang Kai looked up, but before he could make out the person's face, the other party bellowed, "Where do you think you're going, boy?" Right after the person finished speaking, he pushed out his fist with an immense force. World force undulated. Even the void trembled slightly. A puzzled Yang Kai had a feeling that the person must have mistaken him for someone else. However, since the other party was about to strike, he was unable to explain himself, as he quickly extended his palm to meet the attack. Booming sounds were heard, as the other party acted violently, while Yang Kai responded in kind. They exchanged more than 10 moves in just several breaths of time. "Huh!" the person exclaimed, as though he had discovered something strange. Following that, he exerted more force with his hands. If the power he showcased earlier was on par with the 5th order, he was now using 6th order strength. Yang Kai had never expected that he would randomly come across a 6th order open heaven realm master as soon as he left void territory, and for some reason, the other party initially hit his true strength. It wasn't until he sensed Yang Kai's power that he stopped holding back. As a 6th order open heaven realm master himself, Yang Kai certainly wasn't afraid of this stranger, so he surged the power of his small universe as the battle intensified. A moment later, the attacker used a feint before widening the gap between them before raising his hand. "Wait!" Yang Kai abruptly stopped in his tracks and stared coldly at him. It wasn't until this moment that he was able to make out the person's appearance. The other party was a burly man with long dreadlocks, which made him look a bit eccentric. However, judging from the fluctuations of his energy just now, Yang Kai confirmed that he was indeed a 6th order open heaven realm master. As their eyes met, The burly man examined Yang Kai and asked, "Are you Liu Peiyuan?" "No, and I don't know him either." Yang Kai shook his head. "Ah." The man landed a slap on his own forehead, then looked apologetically at Yang Kai and cupped his fist. "I'm so sorry for mistaking you for someone else. This is all a big misunderstanding. Please forgive me." Yang Kai furrowed his brow with displeasure as the other party directly attacked him without verifying his identity first. Although the man didn't have any murderous intent, Yang Kai was still upset. Fortunately, both of them had only made some probing moves, so no one was hurt. Otherwise, the misunderstanding would have turned into something serious. Since Yang Kai was in a rush, he wasn't willing to waste any more time on this man. So he simply nodded and declared, "Since it's a misunderstanding, let's forget it. Farewell." Then he turned around and left. The man shouted from behind, "Farewell, friend." It wasn't until Yang Kai was out of his sight that the man stroked his chin with an amused look. Interesting. While remaining on the same spot, he fished out a communication bead and sent a message. A moment later, a ray of light came over from afar and stopped beside him. The person was none other than Suing Shui. "Did you test him?" she asked. The man nodded. "And how was it?" "Your information is wrong, junior sister." The man scratched his head and looked in the direction Yang Kai had left. "You said that guy ascended to the Fifth Order Open Heaven realm. Is he not in the Fifth Order?" Suing Shui frowned. Chu Huashang had seen Yang Kai break through in person, and the fact was verified by the elders from Yinyang Cave Heaven. After all, besides Chu Huashang, there were also 4 high-rank Open Heaven Realm Masters who had witnessed the incident, so there was no way the information was wrong. He's not in the Fifth Order." The man grinned. "That guy is in the Sixth Order." "No way." Suing Shui shot him a glare. "Did you intercept the wrong guy?" The man shook his head. "You sent his image to me, so there was no way I was mistaken. I was shocked when I traded moves with him just now. I almost suffered a loss at his hands. The power he had showcased was definitely not in the Fifth Order. Although I didn't use my full strength, he was still able to force a draw. That could only mean that he's in the Sixth Order Open Heaven realm." "How is that possible?" Suing Shui was astounded. According to the information she had obtained, Yang Kai was supposed to be in the Fifth Order Open Heaven realm. It had only been 2 years since he achieved his ascension, so there was no way he could go from the Fifth Order to the Sixth Order in such a short time. No one in the world could achieve that. The only possibility was that he had ascended to the Sixth Order instead of the Fifth Order at that time. However, that was also impossible. Chu Huashang might conceal the truth for Yang Kai, but there was no way the high-rank Open Heaven Realm Masters at the scene were mistaken. "Isn't this for the best?" The man grinned. "Although there's only a difference of 1 order, the gap in real strength is enormous. I was initially worried that he would suffer a setback in the Tao Theory Assembly, but now it seems that he has a chance to come out the winner. Although a Fifth Order Open Heaven Realm Master is fairly powerful, such a person is too weak compared to the people who are going to join the Tao Theory Assembly." After giving it a thought, Suing Shui realized that he was right and nodded gently. "It's indeed a pleasant surprise. Since we've given him a test, we should return to the sect now. Let's go," the man said and charged forward, followed by Suing Shui. Yinyang Cave Heaven was going to hold a Tao Theory Assembly to select a husband for the core disciple Chu Huashang, and they had sent out invitations to many great forces across the 3,000 worlds. Since the event was just around the corner, many flight-type artifacts could be seen heading to Yinyang territory from different great territories. As Yang Kai flew forward, he could see flight-type artifacts of different shapes and sizes rushing towards Yinyang territory. It was the first time Yang Kai was visiting the headquarters of a cave heaven, and he was extremely curious about it. He wanted to see the heritage of one of the top great forces in the 3,000 worlds for himself, so he could understand the difference between Void Land and them. 1 month later, he arrived at a place that was 2 great territories away from Yinyang territory. He could also see more flight-type artifacts as he continued moving forward. Yinyang Cave Heaven was one of the 36 cave heavens, which was why it was famous. The person was none other than Yinyang Cave Heaven Inner Elder Su Linggong. He was also the honored master of Chu Huashang, Suing Shui, and Qing Kuei. Just then, Chu Huashang shuffled forward with a long sword that was even bigger than her in her hands. Upon reaching the man, she lifted the sword and said in a clear voice, "Your sword is here, honored master." "What are you doing?" Su Linggong gazed at her. Chu Huashang batted her eyes and replied, "Didn't you say you were going out to kill them all? Let's go now. I'll cheer for you from behind." "Do you think I don't dare to do it?" Su Linggong sported a grim expression and took the long sword and dashed towards the door. "I'm going now. No one can stop me." Qing Kuei and Suing Shui sported dark expressions. Following an exchange of glances, they sprinted forward and respectively grabbed Su Linggong's arms. "Calm down, honored master. We can discuss this first." "Please don't act on impulse, honored master. It will certainly feel good to kill them now, but that won't solve the problem. Why would you invite trouble to yourself for no results?" The two of them hurriedly dissuaded Su Linggong from acting rashly. As though Su Linggong had just noticed them, he said, "Oh, Suer and Qing'er." Suing Shui quickly snatched the long sword from her honored master and tossed it at Chu Huashang before glaring at her. In response, Chu Huashang playfully stuck out her tongue. "Please have a seat and drink some tea, honored master." Qing Kuei pulled Su Linggong towards a chair and got him a cup of tea from the side. Su Linggong grunted and took a sip of the tea. All of a sudden, he blew his top again and threw the cup to the ground, which caused it to break into pieces. In a furious voice he said, "Since you've returned from outside, I suppose you've heard something." Qing Kuei replied with a straight face, "Yes. The territory gates around Yinyang territory have all been cordoned off, and all foreign Sixth Order Open Heaven Realm Masters, who were planning to take part in the Tao Theory Assembly, were chased away. Only Fifth Order Open Heaven Realm Masters are being allowed to enter. They've gone too far." Su Linggong pounded his fist against the table. "How can those Fifth Order trash even hope to marry my disciple? Who do they think they are? They should look at themselves in the mirror first." With the long sword in her hands, Chu Huashang said with a nonchalant smile, "I don't mind marrying a Fifth Order Open Heaven Realm Master. At that point, I'll bring the person to meet you, and you can just come up with a random reason and kill him. It won't be so bad being a widow." Su Linggong's eyes brightened when he heard that as he gazed at Chu Huashang, and said with an elated expression, "You're indeed a clever little girl. How did you even come up with that idea?" Chu Huashang replied, "It's all thanks to your teachings, honored master." Su Linggong guffawed with a proud expression. "Of course it's because of my teachings. My disciples are all intelligent and talented." Qing Kuei and Suing Shui sported helpless expressions. Then, Suing Shui glared at Chu Huashang and said, "How can you make a scene here beside honored master, when you really have to marry a Fifth Order Open Heaven Realm Master from one of those cave heavens or paradises? You'll spend most of your days crying." Chu Huashang scoffed. "Let's see who will be the one crying in the end." Suing Shui shook her head and gazed at Su Linggong. "Honored master, why has this matter even come to such a point? It isn't like there have never been any disputes or even casualties between the cave heavens and paradises. It's an age-old admonition that the disciples of the cave heavens and paradises must not fight against each other. But everyone knows that conflicts still happen. Why is Chuer getting this kind of punishment?" Upon hearing that, Su Linggong sighed. There are indeed some conflicts between the cave heavens and paradises, and it's true that there have been casualties as a result. However, those were just internal struggles among the cave heavens and paradises. But now, Chuer has made a mistake for an outsider. Moreover, that brat attempted to directly ascend to the high-rank Open Heaven realm, which broke the taboo. Qin Kuei and Suing Shui frowned. Given their powers and statuses, they were aware of some secrets that were not known to most people. As they recalled the stories of the carnage of many years ago, they could faintly grasp the severity of the matter. The cave heavens and paradises were trying to make their stance clear. They would never allow anyone to directly ascend to the high-rank open heaven realm, and this incident could serve as a warning to all other cultivators of that determination. If an event like this ever happened again, the disciples from the cave heavens and paradises should know what to do and remember which side to take. Yin-Yang Cave Heaven is one of the 36 cave heavens, so while we can resist a certain amount of pressure, Chuer will have to suffer some punishment, Su Linggong sighed. Then, his expression turned furious all of a sudden. However, those old bastards are too shameless. How can they pull such a dirty trick, just because they aren't willing to let a sixth-order disciple get married into our sect? Qin Kuei and Suing Shui traded glances. Then the former said, "We have a potential solution to that, honored master." Su Linggong gaped at him and asked, "What solution do you have?" Qin Kuei replied, "I reckon that the person who has caused all this will have to solve this problem as well." Su Linggong became startled for a moment. "Are you talking about that Yang Kai?" Then he became vexed. "I'm still mad at that brat. If I ever see him, I'll kill him with my sword. It's because of that thief that Chuer's happiness is ruined." Well, honored master." Qin Kuei appeared hesitant. Su Linggong shot him a glare. "Stop stuttering like a woman and speak up. To be honest with you, honored master, Yang Kai has arrived in Yin-Yang Cave Heaven. He's currently resting in Riverside House now," Qin Kuei said meekly. Su Linggong became startled for a moment, before he stood straight up and bellowed, "Father here will go hack him to death now." When he attempted to take his sword though, Chu Huashang hugged it tightly and shook her head at him. "Let go!" Su Linggong yelled. "No!" Chu Huashang repeatedly shook her head. "Are you trying to go against me, little girl?" Su Linggong was incensed. "If you want to hack him to death, you'll have to kill me first." Chu Huashang extended her fair neck and presented her head to Su Linggong, who then pushed her away. Martial Peak, Chapter 44-43, already made a move? Suing Shui nodded. He's indeed in the sixth order. Chu Huashang appeared astounded. She was there when Yang Kai ascended to the open heaven realm, so she had witnessed the entire process. He was just a fifth-order open heaven realm master at that time. So how did he become a sixth-order open heaven realm master now? She estimated that it had only been 2 years since they parted ways. In such a short time, it was already difficult for a new open heaven realm master to solidify their cultivation, let alone ascend to the next order. He's in the sixth order? Su Linggong finally came to his senses as he arched his brow with joy. Ha ha ha, good. Since he's a sixth-order open heaven realm master, I'll not kill him for now. Tell him to do his best in the Dao Theory Assembly, regardless of whether he wins or not. I'll give him some benefits once it's over. He was truly ecstatic. Those shameless people had cordoned off the territory gates around Yin-Yang territory and forced sixth-order open heaven realm masters to leave, allowing only cultivators below the sixth-order open heaven realm to take part in the Dao Theory Assembly. They were doing it because they wanted to make sure that only fifth-order open heaven realm masters would eventually have the chance to fight for first place, and thus, they would only have to lose a fifth-order disciple to Yin-Yang heaven. However, if there was even a single sixth-order open heaven realm master who joined the assembly all of a sudden, the plans of those great forces would fall apart. By then, they would have to use a different tactic. Whether it was for the reputation of their own sects or some other reasons, they would have to let sixth-order open heaven realm masters participate in the event, and Yin-Yang Cave Heaven would be saved from any embarrassment. Su Linggong didn't expect Yang Kai to be the winner. Regardless of the reason why Yang Kai had become a sixth-order cultivator, it had been too short a time since his ascension. After all, in the open heaven realm, time was vital for a cultivator to grow more powerful. Although Yang Kai had somehow become a sixth-order open heaven realm master, He didn't have enough time to accumulate more heritage in his small universe. Therefore, he should be no match for those who broke through to the sixth order hundreds, or even thousands of years ago. It was true that since Yang Kai had caused all this, he should also be the one to solve the problem. Considering all this, Su Linggong's resentment against Yang Kai subsided slightly. How many people are aware of this secret? He then asked. Qing Kuei replied, no one else other than junior sister Su and I. That was the reason he could easily enter Yin-Yang Cave Heaven. Those from Myriad Demons Heaven also believed that he was only a fifth-order master, so they let him through the territory gate, without giving him too much of a hard time. Su Linggong's lips curved into a devious smile. It's not a good idea that no one else is aware of it. We'd better make some noises, and let everyone know that he has ascended to the sixth order. That will be much more interesting. If no one knew that Yang Kai had ascended to the sixth order open heaven realm, the great forces who took part in the Tao Theory Assembly wouldn't send sixth order masters to join the competition. In that case, Yang Kai would be able to win first place easily. Honored master. Chu Huashang glared at him. What are you trying to do? Su Linggong stared back at her. How can you shout at me? Where are your manners? Chu Huashang ignored his warning and continued glaring at him. Since no one is aware of junior brother Yang's true power, he would be able to surprise all of them when the time comes. Isn't that a good idea? See for yourself. Qing Kuei fished out a jade slip. What is this? These are the candidates that the great forces have sent to join the Tao Theory Assembly. Yang Kai infused his divine sense into the jade slip and put it down a while later, then said grimly, I've truly wronged her. Qing Kuei said, since you're aware of it, why don't you take part in the Tao Theory Assembly? Yang Kai sighed. Can I see senior sister Chu first? Qing Kuei furrowed his brows with displeasure. A while later, he snorted and rose from the chair. That's all I have to say. Just sleep on it. Then he turned around and left. Yang Kai called out to him, but the latter never responded. While remaining in his seat, he was lost for words. He looked down at the table, thinking that they hadn't finished all the wine. Outside Riverside House, a figure suddenly appeared and gazed at Qing Kuei. She was none other than Su Yingxue. Qing Kuei shook his head and pointed at his own forehead. He's such an obstinate man. Su Yingxue's expression turned cold. He has to pay the price for what he has done. I'll teach him a lesson right now. Qing Kuei immediately took her arm. Don't go. His will is firm. Unless he is given no other choice, no one will be able to change his mind. Do we just do nothing and let this travesty unfold then? Su Yingxue asked coldly. Qing Kuei sighed. Since there's no other choice, we have to use that move. Su Yingxue flung his hand away and snorted. You're really a good senior brother to her. Qing Kuei replied meekly. That's the only thing we can do. It's not like we can just watch as Chuer's happiness is destroyed. Sect Master Yang has to join the Tao Theory Assembly no matter what. It's just that Chuer will have to be taken advantage of in order for that to happen. You've already made a move? Su Yingxue seemed to have realized something. Qing Kuei nodded gently. Although both of them were in the sixth order open heaven realm, he had still easily pulled a little trick on Yang Kai since the latter was unsuspecting. Certainly, the main reason was that he didn't have any murderous or vicious intent when he made a move. Otherwise, Yang Kai would have noticed it. You're now a sixth order open heaven realm master just like me. Chu Huashang giggled and crashed into her embrace. She squirmed for a bit and finally found a position she was most comfortable in. I've just achieved an ascension, so I'm still far behind you. It's different. Su Yingxue shook her head. I directly ascended to the fifth order, and then rose to the sixth order open heaven realm through hard work. My potential is not comparable to yours. Chu Huashang looked up at her. When I grow to be powerful one day, I'll protect you and make sure that you won't suffer from any grievances. Su Yingxue smiled gently. I'll be waiting for that day to come. As they spoke, they heard a series of footsteps coming closer. While Su Yingxue stiffened, Chu Huashang, who was in her embrace, looked up and became pleasantly surprised. Junior brother Yang? Ah. Yang Kai appeared embarrassed when he saw that they were being so intimate. I just walked right in since the door wasn't closed. Sorry. He quickly stepped back and closed the door. Chu Huashang batted her eyes and looked at Suing Shui, then burst into laughter. He seems to have misunderstood something. Suing Shui poked the other woman's forehead. What's so funny about it? All right, I'll take my leave now. You have a talk with him. Then she got to her feet and left the place. Upon opening the door, she saw the embarrassed Yang Kai standing outside the room. As she looked at his face and thought about what would soon happen, she became incensed and bellowed. If you dare to take advantage of Chuer, I'll never let you off. I wouldn't dare to. Yang Kai bent his back. Suing Shui flicked her sleeve, and when she brushed past Yang Kai, she forcefully stepped on his foot. Despite realizing the woman's intentions, Yang Kai didn't dare to dodge, so he could only brace himself and then cringe in pain after the fact. Meanwhile, Suing Shui's footsteps faded into the distance. Chu Huashang stuck out her head from the room and beckoned to him. Come in, junior brother. Yang Kai tottered into the room and instantly caught a whiff of a pleasant fragrance. He took a glance at the room and realized that the decoration was pretty cozy, which allowed him to relax somewhat. Chu Huashang offered him a seat, then filled a cup with tea for him, and smiled with her lips covered. I'm sorry for the pain you have to suffer, junior brother. Although my senior sister appears to be dispassionate, she's a warm-hearted person. Yang Kai wiggled his toes, which were almost crushed, and said insincerely, I can see that. After taking the cup of tea she had prepared for him, he asked, This is your room, right? Should we go to another place to have a chat? He had never expected that Qing Kuei would bring him to Chu Huashang's bedroom. After all, her reputation would be tarnished if others found out that they stayed in the same room for any reason. Why should we go to another place? Can't we have a talk in my room? Or, are you worried that I'll do something to you? Chu Huashang teased as she directly sat across from the man. Stop teasing me, senior sister. The corners of Yang Kai's mouth twitched. He reckoned that he should be at ease since the woman wasn't worried about anything, and they were not going to do anything inappropriate anyway. Across from him, Chu Huashang rested her chin on her palm and looked smilingly at him. Have you come all the way here to see me, junior brother? Yang Kai nodded his head with a serious expression. I heard that the people from your sect are holding a Tao Theory assembly to select a husband for you. It's me who put you in this position, so I had to speak with you. He sighed. A nonchalant Chu Huashang replied, It's not your fault. It's just that some people are trying to create trouble, and it has nothing to do with you, so don't feel guilty at all. In any case, it's thanks to you that I managed to ascend to the open heaven realm in the first place. An embarrassed Yang Kai shook his head. I didn't help you much. In fact, she had to fall in love with him, and then sever ties with him, in order to ascend to the open heaven realm. He had indeed done nothing at all, as it was all her own hard work. You already offered me the best help since I came across you at the most critical moment, before my ascension to the open heaven realm, and fell in love with you. If it weren't for you, I didn't even know how much longer I would have to wait before I found a suitable person. Yang Kai was secretly stunned as he reckoned that only the disciples from Yin Cave Heaven would have the nerve to speak so freely about such things. Most women were not so bold. Not willing to dwell on this topic, Yang Kai said, What plans do you have to solve this issue, senior sister? Chu Huashang replied with a smile. What plans can I have? I'll just wait for the Tao Theory assembly to end, and marry the winner 100 years later. Are you really willing to do that? Yang Kai frowned. As a disciple of a cave heaven, there are many things that are not up to me to decide. So what does it matter if I'm not willing? I've been nurtured by the sect for many years, so now that the sect is in trouble, I have to take up the responsibility and solve the problem. Moreover, I'm indeed the cause of this incident. Her nonchalance made Yang Kai feel his chest tightening, as he felt extremely guilty. Then, Chu Huashang gazed at him with her alluring eyes and said, Why don't you take part in the Tao Theory Assembly and become the winner? Then I'll get to marry you. Yang Kai's heart skipped a beat as he listened to her bold words and took in her beautiful face that was oh so close. Chu Huashang looked down at his chest and smiled faintly. Have you fallen for me, junior brother? In fact, Yang Kai had no idea why he was reacting in such a way as his face was all red now. It wasn't the first time he came into contact with Chu Huashang, and there were moments in the past where they literally clung to one another. However, at this moment, he suddenly found this woman to be irresistibly enchanting. As he listened to her voice and saw her smile, his blood seemed to be boiling and his throat felt dry, causing his heart rate to soar. Quickly drinking down some tea to moisten his throat, he commented, "It feels a little hot here, senior sister." Chu Huashang became startled for a moment, then scanned her surroundings and said gently, "It's indeed a little hot here." She laughed. "I guess I just feel warmth since you're willing to visit me at this point." Qing Kuei and Su Yingshui exchanged glances, and worried that something bad would happen. They hurriedly stopped using their secret technique and raced after their honored master. A moment later, following a loud bang, the door of Chu Huashang's room was kicked open. Despite already expecting it, Su Linggong was still incensed when he saw the sight in the room. Clothes were scattered everywhere on the ground, and there was a sense of intimacy in the air. The curtains around the bed had been untied and presently, Yang Kai and Chu Huashang were covered in a quilt, as they hid in the corner and shuddered. They gazed at Su Linggong in horror, as though they were two kids that had been caught making a big mistake. Not a moment too soon. Su Linggong took a glance around the room, and knew that these two young people hadn't managed to do anything yet. They had only taken off their outer clothes. Certainly, Chu Huashang had already been taken advantage of, but she hadn't lost her purity. Otherwise, it would be hard for her to explain herself to the winner of the Tao Theory Assembly. The current situation was the best outcome. "You dare!" Su Linggong bellowed as his fury seemed able to shake the sky. "Chua, I've been your teacher for many years, but I never expected that you'd do such a shameless thing. You disappoint me so." Honored master. Chu Huashang's teeth chattered, as she had never expected things to come to such a point. While she was getting intimate with Yang Kai, her honored master suddenly barged into her room and scared her out of her wits. She instantly felt cold all over her body. "Honored master?" The middle-aged man that had just barged into the room was clad in a robe embroidered with snake patterns, and there was a golden crown on his head. As Yang Kai gazed at the enraged man with surging murderous intent, he had the urge to dig a hole and stick his head into it. It was truly embarrassing that he was caught in bed with Chu Huashang by her honored master. He still hadn't the foggiest idea why he was so impetuous this time. He only intended to have a talk with Chu Huashang. So how did the two of them end up in bed? This wasn't how he would usually act. Fortunately, nothing had happened yet, or else he wouldn't be able to explain himself. "Senior," Yang Kai hurriedly called out. "Enough nonsense. Today you must die." Su Linggong yelled as his murderous intent almost materialized. Following that, he charged towards Yang Kai. Qing Kuei and Su Yingshui arrived just in time. The former quickly wrapped his arms around the older man's waist and shouted, "Please calm down, honored master. He's the Lord of Voidland, Yang Kai. He saved junior sister Chu's life before." Su Linggong exerted more force with his hands in an attempt to push Qing Kuei away, but the latter would never let him go, so he roared, "I don't care who he is. Since he has the guts to take advantage of my disciple, he must die." "Well," Yang Kai glanced cautiously at the older man. "We didn't manage to do it. Nothing had happened between us." Su Linggong snapped, "You didn't manage to do anything because this monarch arrived in time. Had I been just a breath later, you would have succeeded." "It's all my fault. I have no idea what was going on, but I had indeed accidentally made a mistake. I'm willing to suffer the punishment for my acts." Yang Kai directly offered an apology. Although they didn't manage to do anything, Chu Huashang's reputation would be affected if this incident was known to others. After all, outsiders wouldn't believe that nothing had happened under such circumstances. Su Linggong sneered. What's the point of punishing you? You've already taken advantage of Chuer. Can you undo it? Yang Kai hung his head low with a meek expression. What do you want me to do, senior? Please just tell me. Su Linggong said coldly. You know what you have to do now. Yang Kai fell silent for a moment, then let out a long sigh. Don't worry, senior. When the Tao Theory Assembly takes place, I'll take part in it, and give you a satisfactory answer. It seemed that he had no choice but to participate in the Tao Theory Assembly now. He reckoned that both of them would be embarrassed if he really saw Chu Huashang right now, so he obeyed Qin Kuei and returned to his temporary residence. The next morning, Qin Kuei came to visit again and led Yang Kai to deal with the procedures to take part in the Tao Theory Assembly. Yang Kai stared at the other party's back as he fell into his thoughts. He finally came to his senses after a night of contemplation. He was quite flustered the day before, so he hadn't managed to sort out his thoughts for a while. After he returned to Riverside House, however, Yang Kai pondered on the issue and realized that something was off. The incident just felt odd to him, as though he had been set up. He was just there to visit Chu Huashang and find out about her intentions. He didn't have any lustful thoughts, so how did they end up lying together on her bed? Furthermore, the atmosphere at that time had been strange, and it was as if he couldn't help having obscene and lustful thoughts fill his mind. Chu Huashang seemed more attractive than she usually was, and his self-restraint also seemed to be much lower than it should have been. In truth, Yang Kai was quite fond of Chu Huashang, but it hadn't reached the point where he wanted to get intimate with her. He even suspected that he had been affected by some kind of aphrodisiac, but after checking on his body carefully, he couldn't detect any residual medicinal traces. Another thing was that Su Linggong and the others came at exactly the right moment to interrupt him and Chu Huashang. If they came any earlier, nothing would have happened in the first place, and if they came any later, he and Chu Huashang would have already finished cooking rice and shelling peanuts. Moreover, why would the master and his disciples visit Chu Huashang together all of a sudden? It might be possible for Qin Kuei and Su Yingxue to do that since they were Chu Huashang's senior brother and sister. However, as a seventh-order Open Heaven Realm master, Su Linggong shouldn't have had so much free time. What's more, while Su Linggong was her honored master, there was no way he should have directly kicked open the door to his female disciple's bedroom without first knocking. Yang Kai had a feeling that he had been set up, but he couldn't gather any proof. Even if he asked Qin Kuei about it now, the latter definitely wouldn't admit to it. Therefore, he decided to pretend to know nothing. In any case, taking part in the Tao Theory Assembly was no big deal to him. On the road, Qin Kuei was amiable to Yang Kai as he told him some interesting tales about Yinyang Cave Heaven, and soon, they arrived at their destination. The procedures to join the assembly were not complicated. Yang Kai just had to tell them his name, background, and cultivation. Then he was given a token. However, when he left, he was brought to another spirit peak, instead of his usual resting place, Riverside House. Upon hearing his associate's questions, he shook his head to indicate that he had never met this guy before. A sense of wariness flashed through the young man's eyes as he wondered, could he be a disciple from one of the cave heavens or paradises? However, even if he was a disciple from one of the cave heavens or paradises, he wouldn't necessarily be treated by Qin Kuei in such a way. The arrival of such a person on intertwining Fate Peak all of a sudden caused them to feel a little concerned. A fourth-order Open Heaven Realm master offered to help. Give me a moment, Brother Kong. I'll ask around and see whether I can find out that guy's background. The person called Brother Kong nodded his head. Many thanks for your help, Brother Sunday. The man surnamed Sun appeared to be honored. Don't mention it, Brother Kong. When the Tao Theory Assembly starts, all of us on intertwining Fate Peak will need you to take care of us. So you don't have to thank me for solving such a trivial problem for you. The man surnamed Kong nodded in a reserved manner. Good. After the message was sent, they waited. Many people had arrived on intertwining Fate Peak much earlier than Yang Kai, so they had either already known or met each other, forming a rather harmonious relationship with no major conflicts so far. However, nobody seemed to know who Yang Kai was, and since he was guided here by Qin Kuei personally, he naturally drew some attention. Martial Peak, Chapter 44-48. I'll teach you a move. All of them widened their eyes as they couldn't believe what they saw. A fifth-order open heaven realm master had gathered all his strength to thrust out his spear. Yet that spear was easily grasped by another fifth-order open heaven realm master, with only one hand. It proved that the latter must be immensely powerful. You're from Heavenly Sword Union? Yang Kai examined Kong Tianyu. Kong Feng was your father? Upon closer look, he realized that the person named Kong Tianyu indeed shared some similarities with Kong Feng in terms of their appearances. After recovering from the initial shock, Kong Tianyu gripped his spear, and with a flourish shook off Yang Kai's grasp. Retreating a few steps to widen the gap with his enemy, both shocked and doubtful, he muttered, "You." Kong Tianyu was shocked at the fact that his enemy possessed such incredible strength. Just now, he couldn't detect Yang Kai using his world force at all, but the latter could easily grab his spear. In other words, Yang Kai had only used brute force to accomplish this feat. The fact that a fifth-order open heaven realm master was able to reach such a point in terms of physical strength was unheard of. At the very least, throughout Kong Tianyu's martial Dao, he had never come across anyone who was so strong before. However, he wasn't aware of the immensity of Yang Kai's strength in his dragon form. No cultivators in the same order could surpass him when it came to physical prowess. Heavenly Sword Union. Ha ha ha. Yang Kai suddenly started chuckling. Very good. I haven't managed to visit your sect yet, but you've come here to make a scene instead. Interesting indeed. After his return from the Shadowless Cave Heaven, Yang Kai subsequently destroyed Boundless Altar and Golden Rainbow Province to help the proprietress resolve her heart demon oath, which sent a shock wave across the great forces that took part in the raid on Void Land. Consequently, many of those same great forces sent representatives to Void Land's Star City with gifts and requested to meet Yang Kai, as they were worried that he would also destroy their sects. In fact, Yang Kai didn't really care about the great forces that had invaded Void Land before. At that time, they were forced to join the alliance for various reasons. Void Land was a powerful sect now, so there was no point in settling the grudges against those minor great forces. It would be a waste of time and energy. With that said, Yang Kai didn't intend to let Heavenly Sword Union off. He initially planned to call the roll and storm into Heavenly Sword Union to get even with them. However, the Dao Theory Assembly had derailed his plan, so he had to come to Yinyang Cave Heaven first. It never crossed his mind that he would bump into Kong Feng's son here. It seemed that Qin Kuei had deliberately made him stay on intertwining Fate Peak, for this exact reason. Then Yang Kai let out a long sigh. So troublesome. I initially planned to keep a low profile, but it seems that won't be possible now. He was fully aware of what was going on with the Dao Theory Assembly. The most powerful participants were only in the fifth-order open heaven realm. By taking part in the assembly as sixth-order open heaven realm master, he was like an adult who was competing against children. There was no doubt that he could easily win first place if nothing changed. If he revealed his true strength now though, the situation in the Dao Theory Assembly would change. By then people who were above the fifth-order open heaven realm would participate in the assembly. Then, it suddenly dawned upon Yang Kai that perhaps this was the exact outcome Su Ling Gong and Qin Kuei wanted to see. He reckoned that it must be the truth, and it wasn't until this moment that he realized why he and Chu Huashang were caught in the act. This was all a plot set up by Su Ling Gong. Cunning old fox. Despite knowing that Su Ling Gong was doing it for Chu Huashang, Yang Kai was still displeased as no one would be happy being manipulated. What are you talking about? Kong Tianyu glared at him as he finally calmed down. The fight between Open Heaven Realm Masters was always about the powers of their small universes, not physical strength. He was astonished that Yang Kai was able to easily grasp his spear just now, but he had now recovered from his shock. Regardless of what you say, you will die today. Kong Tianyu wielded his spear again and pointed it at Yang Kai. As he spoke, he pushed out his spear, which was surrounded with an aura from an experienced Fifth-Order Open Heaven Realm Master. As his world force permeated the place, a trail of darkness was left behind that could hardly be healed as he extended his spear. I was the young Union Master of Heavenly Sword Union, and the successor to the Union Master. I had all the glory with me. However, it's all because of you that I'm marginalized by the old farts in the sect now. But so what? As long as I can become the winner in the Tao Theory Assembly, I'll be the young master of Yin-Yang Cave Heaven. By then, I'll make all of them kneel before me and beg for my mercy. Ha ha ha. Do you see it now? That's the difference between us. Although you're also a Fifth-Order Master, you're not comparable to me. I've been in this order for hundreds of years, while you only achieved an ascension 2 years ago. Let's see how much longer you'll... What? Kong Tianyu abruptly had his arrogant speech cut off, as he became rooted to the spot. His hideous expression contorted as he gazed at his own hands with trembling eyes. He was supposed to be holding a spear, which was a Fifth-Order artifact that Kong Feng had refined for him when he ascended to the Fifth-Order Open Heaven realm in the past. However, there was presently nothing in his hands. The Fifth-Order artifact, that had been with him for hundreds of years, had suddenly gone missing. Looking up, he saw that his spear was now in Yang Kai's hands as the latter nonchalantly wielded the weapon. When did that happen? Kong Tianyu's pupils contracted as the cold sweat slid down from his forehead to his cheeks. Although the young man in front of him looked ordinary, he felt like he could see the door of death slowly opening before his eyes. The people around them were flabbergasted. Initially, they could see that Kong Tianyu's attacks became increasingly menacing every time he pushed out his spear. Faced with the bombardment of attacks, Yang Kai's only option would be to dodge and flee. However, to their astonishment, the situation had been turned around in the blink of an eye. Kong Tianyu's artifact was snatched by his opponent, and no one could clearly see what happened at that moment. Then, he gently waved his hand to motion for the person to withdraw, and stared at Su Linggong before commenting. An ingenious move indeed, Brother Su. This Zhua is impressed. With the wine cup in his hand, Su Linggong looked smilingly at him. What are you talking about, Brother Zhua? I don't understand. It's fine. I know what you've done. The old man surnamed Zhua sneered and rose from the chair. I'll take my leave. Seeing that, Pei Wenxian, who was seated among the younger disciples, hurriedly got up and left with him. As they walked down the mountain, Pei Wenxian cautiously followed the old man surnamed Zhua. He instinctively had a feeling that the other party was in a terrible mood, but he had no idea what had happened. There's been a change in the Tao Theory Assembly, Wenxian, the old man surnamed Zhua suddenly said. Pei Wenxian became startled for a moment, then asked, Master Zhua, you mean? This old man was none other than Zhuo Bukun, an elder from Myriad Demons Heaven. In the past, Tijun was responsible for handling all external affairs. However, after his death in the Shattered Heaven, Zhuo Bukun took over his duties and subordinates. A Sixth-Order Open Heaven Realm Master has appeared in the Tao Theory Assembly, Zhuo Bukun replied. A Sixth Order? We all agreed that only Fifth-Order Open Heaven Realm Masters would join the Assembly. Who broke the rule? Pei Wenxian asked with a frown. He's not from one of the cave heavens and paradises. You know him as well actually. Who is it? The Lord of Voidland Yang Kai. Pei Wenxian was startled for a moment, then knitted his brows together. Are you mistaken, Master Zhua? I'm aware that Yang Kai is in Yin-Yang Cave Heaven, because he moved past the territory gate we had cordoned off. However, he's supposed to be in the Fifth Order Open Heaven realm, not the Sixth Order. The eldest son of Kong Feng, Kong Tianyu, ascended to the Fifth Order Open Heaven realm several hundred years ago. His power was considered quite good among those in the same order. Nevertheless, he was killed by Yang Kai in one move. Pei Wenxian's pupils contracted when he heard that. Although he hadn't been in any contact with Kong Tianyu before, he had heard about him. Just like Zhuobu-kun had said, that guy was a powerful Fifth Order Open Heaven realm master, who achieved his ascension several hundred years ago. Nonetheless, he was killed by Yang Kai with only one move. Pei Wenxian wouldn't doubt Zhuobu-kun. Since the older man had said so, the information must have been verified. Seeing as Yang Kai was able to kill Kong Tianyu easily, he had to be in the Sixth Order Open Heaven realm. Pei Wenxian was dumbfounded to learn that Yang Kai was in the Sixth Order, which was the same as him, as according to the information the cave heavens and paradises had gathered, Yang Kai had only made it to the Fifth Order outside the shadowless cave heaven. Suppressing the doubt in his mind, Pei Wenxian asked, "Master Zhuo, you mean?" He knew that Zhuobu-kun wouldn't have said such a thing for no reason. He was definitely required to do something. According to the original plan, all of us only had to respectively send one Fifth Order Open Heaven realm master to take part in the Tao Theory Assembly. However, with this turn of events, things have changed. What's more, the problem occurred at the territory gate we were responsible for. Since we're at fault, we have to give an explanation to the others. I want you to participate in the assembly and become the winner, Zhuobu-kun ordered impassively. That was the reason he immediately left the gazebo upon hearing the news. The news would be spread among the other great forces soon, and if he hadn't left, he would have been criticized by the others. After all, the problem was with the territory gate that myriad demons heaven had guarded. Upon hearing that, Pei Wenxian replied, "I can definitely become the winner. But Master Zhuo, I'll have to marry into Yinyang Cave Heaven by doing so." Despite knowing that Yang Kai was also in the Sixth Order Open Heaven realm, he was still confident of defeating the other party, since he was a disciple from a cave heaven. The disciples from the cave heavens and paradises were not afraid of anyone in the same order. "You're a core disciple of myriad demons heaven, so we won't let you marry into Yinyang Cave Heaven. Don't worry, I'll handle the issue." Pei Wenxian nodded his head. "I'll do as you say, Master Zhuo." After giving it a thought, Zhuobu-kun said, "You must not be complacent. Although you've refined Sixth Order elements, and eventually ascended to the Sixth Order Open Heaven realm, Yang Kai condensed several Seventh Order elements before. Moreover, he's able to use a divine manifestation. Therefore, you can't regard him like any other Sixth Order Open Heaven realm master. It will probably be difficult for you to deal with him." Pei Wenxian replied, "Don't worry, Master Zhuo. I will not be negligent." "Very good. The assembly is just a few days away. Get some rest, and make sure that you're prepared." "Yes." In the gazebo on the Spirit Peak, Su Linggong was humming a tune, as he was in a jovial mood. He watched as the cultivators from the cave heavens and paradises came over and reported to their respective elders in small voices one by one. The elders initially had no idea why Zhuobu-kun had left all of a sudden, but upon hearing the reports from their subordinates, they finally realized what had happened. A Sixth Order Open Heaven realm master had suddenly shown up in the Tao Theory Assembly. Although there was only one person, it had derailed all of their plans and arrangements, forcing them to change their tactics. The elders subsequently left, all of them shooting resentful glances at Su Linggong before that. It was never a good feeling to be stabbed in the back. Su Linggong, on the other hand, only became more jubilant. After all of them were gone, he couldn't help but start guffawing. Meanwhile, there were only a small number of people in a certain palace of Yinyang Cave Heaven, where Open Heaven realm masters had to make a registration to take part in the Tao Theory Assembly. Those who were supposed to make a registration had already done so. And since the assembly was just a few days away, it was basically too late for those who hadn't managed to do so already to sign up. The disciples responsible for registering the Open Heaven realm masters were thus lazing about somewhat sleepily. Although there were several hundred people already registered, there was only one Sixth Order Open Heaven realm master. The outcome of the Tao Theory Assembly wouldn't be surprising since there was a stark difference between those in different orders. However, they were just ordinary disciples, so it had nothing to do with them. When two disciples from Yin Cave Heaven, who were bored behind the registration desk, saw a figure appearing all of a sudden in front of them, they were astonished. Looking up, they could instantly recognize that the person was a sixth-order Open Heaven Realm Master, who was the outer elder of Myriad Demons Heaven. Previously, this person had brought a fifth-order Open Heaven Realm Master from the same sect to make a registration, so the two disciples could recognize him. One of the disciples from Yin Cave Heaven rose from the chair and asked, "So, it is Elder He. Why have you come here all of a sudden?" Elder He's expression was so cold that it was as though a layer of frost could be scraped off his face. He had nowhere to vent out his fury, which almost burned him alive. He was the elderly man who had previously stopped Qing Kuei and Yang Kai just outside the territory gate. Since Yang Kai had managed to enter Yin Cave Heaven under his watch, he had to take full responsibility for it. As such, he had just been harshly reprimanded by Zhuobu-kun, which was why he was in a foul mood. "I'm here to make a registration," he said in a sulky voice. "What?" The disciple who spoke earlier was startled. When he looked behind Elder He saw no one there. Puzzled, he asked, "Are you doing it for yourself or?" Elder He roared, "You want this old master to marry into Yin Cave Heaven? Of course, I'm making a registration for someone else." The two disciples were stunned as they had no idea why Elder He was so incensed. Still, they hurriedly straightened up and helped him with the registration. "Please tell me the person's name, cultivation, and master sect." Elder He replied in a grim voice, "Pei Wenxian, Sixth Order Open Heaven Realm, Myriad Demons Heaven." The two disciples were startled as they looked up at him. One of them asked hesitantly, "Are you sure you want to make a registration for senior brother Pei?" They had heard about Pei Wenxian. He was a rising star in Myriad Demons Heaven, who directly ascended to the Sixth Order Open Heaven Realm. There was no doubt that he had a bright future. Martial Peak. Chapter 4450 Lu Jing. The status of Pei Wenxian in Myriad Demons Heaven was the same as Chu Huashang in Yin Cave Heaven. Such a person was destined to be one of the most important figures in Myriad Demons Heaven in the future, so there was no way he would marry into Yin Cave Heaven. Otherwise, it would be a huge loss for his sect. Therefore, when the two disciples, who were responsible for registering the candidates, heard that Elder He was making a registration for Pei Wenxian to take part in the Tao Theory Assembly, they were dumbfounded. "Cut the crap. Do it now and give me a jade token." Elder He snapped. Yes. Please give us a moment, Elder He." Not daring to be negligent, the two disciples hurriedly recorded Pei Wenxian's information and passed the elderly man a jade token. Not willing to stay there any longer, Elder He took the token and left while the two disciples exchanged glances in puzzlement. Before they even recovered from their shock, more people had come to register. Half a day later, the two disciples fell into a dazed state as they looked at the book in front of them. In such a short time, more than 10 cave heavens and paradises had sent new disciples to take part in the Tao Theory Assembly, and they were all in the Sixth Order Open Heaven Realm. Just like Pei Wenxian, they were rising stars of their respective sects, who achieved an ascension in the past 100 years. The two disciples were torn between tears and laughter, because there was even a woman on the list. The words Langya Paradise, Gupan Sixth Order, were clearly written in the book. The purpose of the Tao Theory Assembly was to help Chu Huashang find a husband, so the participants were naturally all men. Something had to be terribly wrong with Langya Paradise, as they had sent a female disciple. If Gupan happened to become the winner, she would have to bed Chu Huashang in the future. The two disciples felt their blood beginning to boil as they began to imagine such a future. Although they had no idea what had happened that made these new Sixth Order Open Heaven realms change their minds and take part in the Tao Theory Assembly, they could clearly feel that a change was taking place in the assembly. Their gazes fell upon a certain name, as they had a feeling that the change had something to do with that person. After all, prior to this, he was the only sixth-order open heaven realm among the hundreds of participants in the assembly. On intertwining Fate Peak, Yang Kai examined Kong Tianyu's space ring and obtained some fifth-order materials from it. Other than that, there was nothing worth mentioning. As the Lord of Void Land, Yang Kai had a first-class star city and countless powerful open heaven realms as subordinates. Given his wealth, he was naturally dismissive of ordinary treasures. After putting everything of value in his own ring, he continued refining open heaven pills. Soon, however, the barrier around his house was triggered. Instead of a violent fluctuation this time, though, it felt more like someone was simply trying to get his attention. With a frown, Yang Kai got up and lowered the barrier. After pushing the door open, he saw a decent-looking young man standing outside. Seeing Yang Kai, the young man quickly saluted him. Gathering Yuan Union's Lu Jing greets senior brother. Yang Kai sized him up and asked, "What's wrong?" He remembered seeing Gathering Yuan Union in his universe chart, which included all the known great territories and great forces within them. When he was looking for the star boundary in the past, Yang Kai had carefully studied every part of the universe chart, so he vaguely remembered a force called Gathering Yuan Union. However, he didn't pay any attention to this force, since he probably wouldn't come into contact with them. If he wasn't mistaken, Gathering Yuan Union was above average among the second-class great forces, with a sixth-order open heaven realm master overseeing their sect. "I'm sorry for bothering you, senior brother." Lu Jing cautiously examined Yang Kai's expression, and upon seeing that the latter didn't show signs of impatience, he set his mind at ease. He was shocked to see Kong Tianyu getting killed in just one move a short time ago. That guy was a fifth-order open heaven realm master, but he was killed like an ant. Therefore, Lu Jing was terrified when dealing with Yang Kai, as he was worried that the latter would make a move on him at any moment. The participants of the Tao Theory Assembly had to understand that they might get killed at any moment. Hence, Yang Kai could murder all the people on intertwining Fate Peak if he wanted to do that. "If you don't mind, can I come in to speak with you?" Lu Jing asked in a gentle tone. After giving it a thought, Yang Kai stepped aside. Lu Jing thanked him and shuffled into the house. After they were seated, Lu Jing said, "I've heard much about you, senior brother. Now that I finally see you." Before he could finish his flattery, Yang Kai raised his hand and cut him off. "Just speak frankly." Since it was the first time they met, there was nothing worth talking about between them, and the only reason Yang Kai let him in was to find out his intentions. An embarrassed Lu Jing coughed and put on a hollow laugh. "Good, senior brother Yang. The reason I've come to visit you is to ask you to protect me in the Tao Theory Assembly to the best of your abilities." Yang Kai frowned and gazed at him in puzzlement. Lu Jing put on a bitter smile. "As you can see, senior brother, I'm just a fourth-order cultivator, one of the weakest among the participants in the Tao Theory Assembly. If I encounter a powerful opponent, there's no way I can survive." With an awkward expression, Yang Kai asked, "Since you're aware of your weaknesses, why have you still come here to take part in the assembly?" A troubled Lu Jing replied, "Do you think I want to be here, senior brother? I had no choice. Although the purpose of the Tao Theory Assembly is to help senior sister Chu select a husband, it is also a major event in the 3,000 worlds. My father told me to take part in it to broaden my horizons and gain some life experience. He doesn't expect me to become the winner. To be honest with you, many participants of the assembly are in the same situation as me." "They're forced to come here by their families?" Yang Kai was surprised. Lu Jing replied, "Well, not all of them. There are only a small number of people who are forced to come here by their families. What I mean is that they're taking part in the assembly not to become the winner, but to go through some training, by using this event as an opportunity." Upon hearing his explanation, Yang Kai nodded his head. After giving it a thought, he realized that it was just like what Lu Jing had said. The Tao Theory Assembly was considered a major event in the 3,000 worlds. Many powerful cultivators had gathered together in this place to exchange moves, which was a kind of training for them. Then, Yang Kai said with a frown. It will be difficult for me to ensure your safety. What I can do at most is to let you off when you're faced with me. The others might not be as easygoing though. Upon hearing that, Lu Jing burst into laughter. Do you think the assembly is just an event where all the participants have to fight with one another until the strongest one emerges? Isn't that the case? Yang Kai was shocked. Lu Jing explained. There might be such an event in the final stage. However, from what I've gathered, the assembly isn't so simple. There must be other arrangements. However, I'm unable to find out how the assembly would be carried out. He paused for a moment. Why do you think those from Yin Yang Cave Heaven want us to stay on different spirit peaks? Yang Kai replied. Of course, it's to allow the stronger cultivators to weed out weaker opponents in advance to simplify the situation. That might be one of the reasons. However, it's also possible that they want us to familiarize ourselves with one another and find our own companions, so that we can face various challenges together. A glint flashed through Yang Kai's eyes when he heard that. Was it really the intention of those from Yin Yang Cave Heaven for making such an arrangement? Lu Jing went on to say, the Tao Theory Assembly is to help senior sister Chu select a husband, so it would be too straightforward if they just wanted to select the strongest cultivator. In that case, there would be no need for a competition at all. We would just have to stand in a row and let the high-rank open heaven realms examine us to select a winner. However, how do they examine the winner's temperament and personality? Only by going through different tests could the participants showcase their capabilities in different areas. Yang Kai reckoned that Lu Jing had a point. Therefore, I think that the Tao Theory Assembly isn't just about fighting against one another. There must be more to it. Lu Jing's eyes seemed to be glowing, as though he was confident that his speculation was right. Then he turned to look at Yang Kai. Hence, I hope you'll ensure my safety to the best of your abilities, senior brother. Yang Kai stroked his chin and said frankly, if the assembly is just like what you've said, I can take care of you to some extent. However, what can you give me? Lu Jing was startled as he hadn't expected Yang Kai to agree so easily. The speech he had prepared in advance now became completely useless, so he simply asked dazedly, what do you want, senior brother? The way Yang Kai gazed at him made him shrink back. If I'm not mistaken, Gathering Yuan Union focuses on doing business. Your ships sail everywhere in the 3,000 worlds, and your sect is quite wealthy. Since you're able to represent Gathering Yuan Union, to take part in the assembly, when you're just in the 4th order, you're obviously an important figure in your sect. Say no more, senior brother. I'm willing to pay you a 6th order Yang element treasure as a reward. What do you think? Lu Jing interrupted Yang Kai as he was worried that the latter would come up with some unreasonable demands. Deal. Yang Kai replied without hesitation. Lu Jing breathed a sigh of relief and cupped his fists. I'll be relying on you then, senior brother. After the Tao Theory Assembly ends, I'll pass you the reward. Yang Kai nodded, and after they chatted for a bit more, Lu Jing left. Upon activating the array again, Yang Kai returned to his room and fell silent. A 4th order open heaven realm master was able to directly offer a 6th order Yang element material, which went to show that Gathering Yuan Union was truly wealthy. It had to be noted that a 6th order material was worth 10 to 20 million open heaven pills, with Yin and Yang element treasures being even more expensive than that. Therefore, it was apparent that Lu Jing was an important figure in Gathering Yuan Union. Perhaps he was the young Union master, which was why he could offer such a handsome reward so easily. If there were indeed other arrangements in the Tao Theory Assembly, just like what Lu Jing had speculated, Yang Kai wouldn't mind protecting him, as long as he was capable of doing so. There was a serious lack of 6th order materials in Void Land. Besides the great emperors Su Yan and his other wives, Yang Kai also needed 6th order materials now. 6th order open heaven realm masters like Yu He and the others also needed 6th order materials to cultivate efficiently. Although he had a first-class star city, where he could obtain 6th order materials from time to time, Yin and Yang element materials were still extremely rare. Lu Jing was clearly a seasoned person, so he knew that other rewards might not be able to move Yang Kai. As such, he directly offered a reward that Yang Kai would not be able to turn down. Everything was peaceful for the next few days. When Kong Tianyu was on Intertwining Fate Peak previously, the place was lively as the residents would exchange pointers from time to time. However, after he was killed by Yang Kai with only one move, the entire Spirit Peak fell into a dead silence. The dozen or so people living here all hid in their resting places to cultivate while keeping their defensive arrays activated, worried that Yang Kai would storm into their places and kill them all in advance. After all, a sixth-order open heaven realm master was essentially unmatched on the Spirit Peak. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.